Good evening. Welcome to the February 4th City of Laguna Beach Planning Commission. Could we have a roll call to order?
Commissioner Sadler,
Here.
Commissioner Whiten,
Here.
Commissioner Dubin,
Here.
Chair Pro Tem Goldman, Chair Kellenberg.
Here. Thank you. We will now have public communications. This is the time during the meeting where you can come to the podium and bring up any item or concern that is not on the agenda. Is there anybody who would like to speak? On that basis, we will close public communications and we will move on to item 4.1, which is a special presentation. And this presentation is going to be on the EIR scoping session for the Phase 2 Downtown Specific Plan. And just a comment on this item is that this is not the item tonight is not about the merits of the policies that are in the Downtown Specific Plan Phase 2. So if you came to debate or to express your opinion on those policies, you kind of came to the wrong meeting. That meeting is going to be in another month or so here at the Planning Commission. There'll also be hearings at the City Council on the merits of the policies in the Phase 2 Downtown Specific Plan. This meeting is a little bit more complicated in a way, and I think a little bit harder, because it's not about, do I like 2-story buildings or 3-story buildings or 1-story buildings? This is about how can the consultants who are doing the EIR do their evaluation in the EIR in a manner that we and you will be satisfied that these policies have been properly evaluated. And so as we go through the discussion this evening, both on the Planning Commission and any input that we welcome from you, we have to put it within that narrower context tonight. So keep that in mind, and we'll remind you later. But at this point, we're happy to hand it over to staff and the consultant to get us started on this very interesting topic.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners and members of the public. I'm Kate Kazama, Associate Planner with the Community Development Department, and item 4.1 is a CEQA public scoping meeting for the notice of preparation of a draft environmental impact report for the Downtown Specific Plan Phase 2 update.
Can we get a volume a little bit higher, please?
Oh. Yes. This is an informational item that will begin with a presentation by city staff and CSG consultants. The presentation will cover the project description, including key proposed changes, the EIR process and timeline, and anticipated environmental topics. Following the presentation, the Planning Commission and public may ask questions or provide verbal input to the staff and consultant. Beginning with introductions, the city team includes Anthony Vieira, Deputy Director of Community Development, Samantha Beyer, Planning Manager, and myself. I will be serving as the project planner and main point of contact for this effort. And next to me, we have Glenn LaJoy from CSG Consultants, which is the firm assisting the city preparing the EIR document. At its core, the California Environmental Equality Act is an objective process to disclose and minimize environmental damage. This means disclosing environmental impacts and identifying ways to avoid or reduce potential impacts. Environmental review does not analyze if a project is good or bad, nor does it advocate for approval or denial of a project. It is intended to inform decision makers and the public. As you all are aware, the city of Laguna Beach is located in the southern portion of Orange County, California, midway between the counties of San Diego and Los Angeles. The slide before you shows the Downtown Specific Plan area, which encompasses approximately 115 acres of the city. The downtown is generally framed by Laguna Canyon Road to the east, which extends up to the current Boys and Girls Club property, the Pacific Ocean to the west, Cliff Drive to the north, and Legion Street to the south, right before the Pacific Edge Hotel. With this update, the boundaries of the specific plan would remain unchanged. For project background, The downtown specific plan was originally adopted in 1989 to guide growth, design, and development in the downtown area. Phase 1 of the specific plan update, which focused on streamlining the business permitting process and parking standards for non-residential uses, was adopted in 2020 and certified by the Coastal Commission in 2022. Phase 2, which focuses on housing-related amendments, was bifurcated for separate processing in coordination with the city's 6th cycle housing element update, which was certified in 2023. The housing element contains various programs that form the city's housing plan. Program 5.2-4 specifically directs the city to adopt a Phase 2 DSP update to reduce development constraints and promote new housing units within the downtown. Lastly, on October 28th of last year, the City Council confirmed the scope of the Phase 2 updates and authorized the preparation of a program EIR. The next few slides will provide a summary of the proposed Phase 2 changes. The slide before you illustrates the land use districts. The DSP currently allows residential uses in all zones except the Arts District and Central Bluffs. Staff is proposing to allow residential uses by right in those areas. Similarly, artist work live units are allowed with CUP approval in all districts except visitor commercial and the multiple family residential district. The proposed change is to expand artist work live units to those areas as well with CUP approval. The change to the building height restrictions is the most significant component of the Phase 2 update. Increases to the downtown housing stock would mostly need to come from new units that are created on 2nd and 3rd floor levels. However, the specific plan currently limits most downtown buildings to a 12-foot height. The exhibit on the left is a survey of the existing downtown building heights, which range from 1 to 4 stories. As you can see, there is already quite a bit of height diversity among a majority of the blocks, and most blocks feature multi-story buildings. The image on the right shows where 2 and 3 story building heights would be studied. With this proposal, properties shown in beige would remain at a single story height, which is limited to 1 block of South Coast Highway between Hotel Laguna and Main Beach. The orange represents areas that could build up to 2 stories, which is proposed for most areas in the downtown. The Arts District along Laguna Canyon Road and areas along Forest, 3rd, and Mermaid are proposed to allow 3 stories. As part of the EIR process, staff will be working with a consultant to develop photorealistic renderings and a 3D model that shows how these changes could alter various areas of the downtown. This would be presented at a later date. Phase 2 also includes a recommendation to increase the allowable density within the downtown and establish an average unit size requirement. This is intended to incentivize the creation of smaller units to better address the city's housing goals. The EIR would establish a maximum residential unit cap of no more than 450 units within the downtown. However, the EIR analysis will consider additional density up to 675 units. This is intended to just provide greater flexibility of where those units can be developed in the future and is for analytical purposes only. This slide summarizes the updates to lot mergers, parking, and urban design guidelines. Staff is proposing to allow lot mergers exceeding 5,000 square feet for certain housing projects in select areas, reducing the parking requirements to half a space per unit, and amending the urban design guidelines to address upper level additions and introduce objective design standards to comply with state housing laws. In terms of required approvals, the updates would require a zoning ordinance amendment to amend the downtown specific plan section within Title 25 of the Laguna Beach Municipal Code and certification of the program EIR. Because the downtown specific plan and Title 25 of the Municipal Code are components of the city's certified local coastal program, approval and certification of an LCP amendment by the Coastal Commission would also be required. And now I will hand it over to our consultant, Glenn, who will expand on the public scoping process.
Good evening. My name is Glenn LaJoy. I am the project manager for the downtown EIR. I'm a principal and director of environmental planning at CSG Consulting. I have over 35 years of experience in the practice of environmental review for local agencies throughout California. The last couple of years, I've assisted the city of Laguna Beach on a few matters involving environmental review, staff training, various aspects working on projects and other situations as well. Our team involves an extensive group of analysts, technical specialists, and subject matter experts. I'm the representative of the team, but there's a whole other group, an engine behind us to make this happen. I will cover the next couple of slides that'll focus on the purpose of the scoping meeting. Some of this is a little repetitive as far as what Kate covered, but it's kind of a reinforcement of the purpose of the meeting. We'll provide an overview of the environmental review for the downtown, the key environmental topics to be reviewed, the environmental review timeline. Basically, the balance of 2026 is the study time and presentation to you folks and the City Council for the decision-making process. And we'll talk more about the feedback for tonight. We're looking for public testimony on environmental considerations, concerns, issues that we need to know about from the community as we begin the study. We were retained by the city in October. It's a partnership with the Southern California Association of Governments. So there's been a couple months of due diligence, development of the project description, and as of the beginning of January, our technical team has begun the process of environmental review. I'll talk more about the process again in a few moments. First, the purpose of the scoping meeting, and Kate covered the overview of the project, the proposed project. We would encourage the community to take a look at the notice of preparation. The document is called a notice of preparation on the city's website. We're currently in a public review process, meaning we are seeking testimony from the community on environmental concerns. And I'll talk about those topics in just a moment that we really focus in on for this environmental review. Again, the NOP, notice preparation, I'll refer to it as the NOP, provides an overview of the project description and environmental matters to be reviewed for the environmental impact report. And I cover these points. So basically, we are in the initial public process, the first step in the public process, meaning there are a couple of benchmarks as we go through. When we go through this process and receive public testimony, we prepare the environmental impact report over the next few months, and that will be issued for public review over 45 days. So the community, the reviewing agencies, interested parties can take a look at the analysis and conclusions of potential impacts, mitigation as it relates to this proposed project in the downtown. Next slide. Just a little more about, I'll call this a little bit of call it CEQA 101, just a little bit of the basics that we look at as far as the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. Under the California Environmental Quality Act, the proposed downtown plan is defined as a project requiring consideration of environmental review under CEQA. And one of the key provisions of the guidelines, the CEQA guidelines, is public participation. It's important that the community understand that this is not an isolated process of a consultant preparing documentations, conclusions, and feeding the information to the decision makers. It's a collective process. We want to understand, starting tonight and through this public review process, what the concerns are in the community, and I'll talk more about the issues that we're going to review. The Environmental Impact Report is the highest level of CEQA review for local agencies in evaluating potential project impacts. There's lesser processes such as categorical exemptions, initial studies, mitigated negative declarations. This one is kicked up to a higher level based on the potential significance of impacts with this project. Next slide. A few reminders for you. This is an informational document to disclose potential impacts, and it basically is a tool to both identify potential impacts and determine what is called mitigation measures. How if there is a potential impact, what are measures that can offset that impact and reduce the significance of that impact? I'll talk about the topics in just a moment. It's important to point out that an environmental impact report under CEQA does not approve or deny a project. It is a tool for decision makers to understand the totality of a project, and if there are impacts, what are the recommendations to respond to those impacts? It could be traffic impacts, it could be air quality, biological resources, and I think the next slide I'll begin to talk about that. Yes, okay. So we are subject to Appendix G. Appendix G is a component of the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, and Appendix G presents 20 different topical areas. And you see the circular wheel, and to the right are the topics that are covered and addressed in an environmental impact report. And give me a few moments. I'm going to give you a little overview of what we're considering with each of those topical areas. So just bear with me as I run through this. And Kate touched upon a few things there. There's an element of viewshed, and there's going to be before and after simulations of various parts of the downtown with implementation of the project. So aesthetics is a very important consideration for the community. What is the change? What is the viewshed factors? Is there a view blockage? Various vantage points throughout the downtown area. What does the change really look like? So there's also going to be a video production that will be a part of this work program. I anticipate sometime in the summertime, the video will be close to completion. With these tools, such as view simulations, video, we determine changes. What are the changes with the visual view characteristics in the downtown? Are there effects with the height change as far as shade and shadow type of implications? Sorry about that. We're obligated to look at lighting and glare type of impacts. When you make change, there are those situations where these type of issues come into play. So aesthetics is a very important issue. Agriculture and forestry is not an issue with this proposed project. So there's no impact has been determined. Air quality. We look at the potential of demolition change with buildings changing in the downtown and new construction. So there's a whole modeling process that looks at both the immediate with the change under construction and then the long-term change as far as air quality emissions with additional residents in the downtown. So there's a modeling process, and we conclude through the modeling process if there are impacts and mitigation that can be recommended in the EIR. Biological resources, we do a baseline field study. There's a lot of data throughout the community on biological resources. We bring it most current to the downtown area. So field study of plant and animal species and the potential effects on sensitive habitats and species will be addressed. Cultural and historical resources, there's a whole baseline process there, a technical study that is being conducted. Look at the study area, the buildings, the conditions of cultural resources. There's a whole records check process. There's a significant database already established by the city. We'll work with that information and determine if there are resources that may be impacted. This is for historical resources, archaeological resources, and paleontological resources as well. Energy, construction and build out of the downtown area. There's a usage and demand in terms of energy resources we will evaluate. Geology and soils, what is the condition in the whole plan area? Are there issues related to soil stability, seismicity, erosion, subsurface conditions? There's plenty of documentation already been conducted throughout the community. We're zeroing in specifically on the downtown area to be able to articulate what we need to know as far as those conditions. Greenhouse gases, emissions, and reduction strategies. And that is regards to electricity use, natural gas, construction, mobile resources, refrigerants. And there's a whole set of state and regional plans and guidelines that projects are subject to. So there's a consistency review of the project with those considerations. Hazards and hazardous materials. There's a whole records check, a database check for the whole area of the community to identify any hazardous conditions that have been documented. If there's sources of contamination, and what is the condition? Is it undergoing cleanup? Where is it in a process to respond to? Also, with the whole topic of hazards, we look at pedestrian and vehicular activity, especially the interface of pedestrians and vehicles throughout the downtown area. Hydrology and drainage, a technical study is being prepared for that as well, looking at drainage patterns through the downtown, the quantities and the quality of water runoff, and how the project as a whole, the downtown, will respond to that. Project design measures to improve runoff and downstream conditions will be addressed. Okay, land use and planning, consistency with the general plan and other policy documents such as the zoning code, and also the recent update to the housing element as well will be addressed. Mineral resources concluded that there's no effect of the project with regard to mineral resources. Noise, there's a technical study that will be prepared looking at the existing conditions within the downtown and the issue of if buildings change and there's construction and there's a potential maybe for vibration depending on the location of the buildings and proximity to other sensitive uses, that will be addressed. So construction and build out is a standard review under the noise topic. Population housing, the consistency with growth projections in the community and the region. And I mentioned the housing element is one of the tools that we use in the review. Public services, that we do extensive contact with police, fire, the school district, the library district, and we seek input on potential effects to their service lines and if they have any considerations for mitigation if there are impacts. Recreation. We do a review of the local parks and recreation facilities if there's any deficiencies and a need to respond to additional population in the area, how that affects those facilities. Transportation. There's a technical study that's underway looking at traffic volumes as a result of the additional housing coming into the downtown. There's vehicle miles traveled. This vehicle miles traveled is a standard of review under CEQA over the last few years, and that methodology will be applied to this study area. We'll look at access and turning movements as a whole in the downtown. The EIR is also subject to tribal consultation. So basically, it's a mandate of consultation from the state, and it's outreach to the tribal community and seeking input for any concerns of the affected tribes. It's a standard practice throughout California. Utilities, water usage, sewer capacity, solid waste, electricity, gas. There's another additional steps in the outreach and getting feedback from those areas. And then finally, wildfire, the potential effects with regard to wildfire overlays in the area and how project overall design factors need to consider wildfire areas. And here's the slide I want to just kind of highlight for you where we're at. Catch up there. So it's shown as step 1 through 4. So step 1 is the notice of preparation, which begins our process in a public review timeline, and we welcome the testimony and impact from the community. Comments will be accepted through February 25th at 5 p.m. So please note that. Step 2 is the draft EIR, public review draft EIR, which is a 45-day review period. We're Once again, you folks, the community can review the EIR just like the notice of preparation, which has been made public. The EIR will be made public on the city's website, and we welcome a review and critique and comment on the conclusions and information that the community has. We then move on to the final EIR preparation, which is for the comments received during the EIR process. The city is required to respond to each of those comments that are provided. And we are looking specifically for comments on environmental considerations. That is the key to this. It's not whether you like a project or not like a project. Really, the responses are directed at environmental matters to help answer a question or clarify items within the environmental impact report. And then there's the certification hearings for the final EIR is step 4. So I'll close by mentioning again that we welcome comments for us to consider as the consultants to the city on the content of the EIR, environmental issues specifically, not the merits of the project. It's all about environmental tonight. And then if there are recommendations or thoughts on mitigation measures, certainly welcome it. Really, that's probably most appropriate when you have a chance to look at the EIR in the summertime. And then the city's required to consider a review of a range of alternatives that may have some changes to the project description. So that will all be presented in the EIR as well. So we thank you for joining in on the presentation. February 25th, 5:30 p.m. is the close of the review period. Kate's information there is provided on the screen and email as well. I'll turn it back over to Kate.
This concludes our presentation. I also wanted to note for any public comments, we do have a sign-in sheet over at the table over there. It's a separate sign-in sheet from the Planning Commission meeting. Any email addresses included, they'll be added to the interested parties notification list. And we also have comment cards available if you'd like to submit your comments after this meeting up until February 25th.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll start off by having questions from the Planning Commission. Who would like to go first? Nobody? No questions?
I guess I'll go. In terms of environmental impact, I know that there was comment in the staff report about proposed parking requirements in the DSP area. I believe at this point it was been reduced to 3 per 1,000. And I wonder if that could be considered on a case-by-case basis, because it seems like we're constantly dealing with parking issues in terms of commercial businesses. And I'm wondering in terms of this kind of dovetails into a part B of this question, which is if we were to have, and I know it's a whole different subject, but if we were to have a 200 to 300 car parking structure at the village entrance, how would that impact environmentally, or would it be a trade-off in terms of requiring all this additional parking in the downtown area if the parking requirement could be met with a parking structure? And is there an environmental trade-off between those two things in terms of continuing to require, the amount of parking that is currently required and what will be required in terms of additional housing in the downtown area versus having a parking structure that could maybe relieve some of the parking requirements for not only for retail, but for potential additional residential? I guess that's a comment more than a question.
Well, and it's not, we're not really trying to answer that.
No,
This is something you're asking them to include that in their
Right.
evaluation.
That's,
Yeah.
I'm trying to frame all my
Okay.
comments in that. Also, again, a comment. The Arts District, I believe, ends at the Boys and Girls Club. And again, considering the desire of the city to add additional housing, not only in the downtown area, but in other areas of the community, if the Arts District were to be extended to El Toro Road, which, as we all know, there's a lot of artists in the Laguna Canyon area, would that be, in terms of environmental impact to the canyon, would it be a detriment or a positive in terms of the potential of adding additional housing and potentially workspaces for the creative community here in Laguna Beach?
Maybe a potential alternative in the EIR.
Right. I'm just trying to weigh these, pluses and minuses for these potential changes. And as far as housing in the downtown, obviously there's impact to infrastructure and also concerns about, flood potential, additional rain runoff mitigation that would need to be included in any kind of additional housing that may or may not be developed in the DSP area. We had an issue a number of years ago concerning subterranean parking in mostly in the downtown, and how that was measured in terms of being able to create potential second or third stories on existing buildings. And I think we got that sorted out by changing the requirement in terms of how you measure building height, because there was a limitation on that based on the driveway ramp if it was within the building envelope or extended outside the building envelope. And I think that was created based on residential projects, and it just got lumped into commercial projects. And I believe we got that changed, but I wanted to note that because it would affect how people will, if building owners want to create second or third stories as permitted, or if they are permitted, that gets the change being that if those building heights would always be measured at grade versus the lower floor of a subterranean parking structure. And I'm not sure, based on if the ramp is outside or within the building envelope, if that has a environmental impact as well. So, but I just wanted to have that noted somewhere so that we don't forget that that change happened a number of years ago. In terms of artist live work and other affordable housing workspaces, there was a mention in the staff report that how would that be maintained so that it doesn't creep into something else like market rate for housing and workspace in the downtown. And I believe that can be handled through deed restrictions placed on those types of properties. I think that's about all I had. I just wanted to throw those comments into the mix. I may have a few others later on. Thank you.
My comments are much broader and more on the order of educating us a little about a couple of things. Number one, how do you identify alternatives as you're going through this process? You have a baseline and then alternatives. And can you explain to us how you identify alternatives?
So the process involves, first and foremost, analysis of the proposed project. And through that process, there are conclusions on impacts that need to be mitigated. And there is the potential for impacts that cannot be mitigated and remain significant. And under the California Environmental Quality Act, there are steps and direction to look at potential alternatives that reduce one or more potentially significant impacts. So in other words, we don't get to the point of determining the range of alternatives until we do the project analysis over the coming months. And at that point, we start to identify what those potential alternatives could be. And oftentimes it involves a reduction in residential unit count, for example, to reduce the amount of, say it's a traffic impact that can be mitigated. So it's a meticulous process to determine what are the range of alternatives, and is a reduction alternative, does it respond to the potential impact that's been identified for the proposed project? And then there's a determination on whether the potential alternative meets the project objectives. Part of the project description that has been noted in the notice of preparation are the project objectives. So there's a whole evaluation that involved there as far as the particular alternative, whether it's responsive to the project objectives, and then there's a final determination whether that alternative should be considered moving forward. So we get there, we need to understand the project first and foremost.
Okay. Your comments about mitigation of the project ties into another question, which is how granular are these technical studies that will be done for the 20, or they're not 20, maybe 15 topics? In other words, are, for example, air quality readings generalized for the entire DSP area, or are they localized based, for example, on using air quality? Are they localized to where housing might be built?
The air quality analysis doesn't result in determination on design, so to speak. There is a methodology that we apply, Southern California Air Basin requirements, which do involve a localized review and regional review. The environmental impact report is going to be identified as a program level EIR, meaning it's the first stage of environmental review for new entitlement that comes forward or proposed as far as a new residence or whatever the residential component consists of. The whole approach under the program EIR for this downtown project is to the greatest extent, evaluate impacts and draw conclusions of mitigation. But it doesn't involve analysis of a particular development. It's the totality of the number of residential units coming in. And then this program EIR serves as the master environmental clearance or review. And then it's a determination by the city whether additional site-specific, project-specific analysis is going to be required based on the conclusions of the program EIR. The program EIR is to be the guiding light as much as possible and have extensive shelf life to provide that guidance and provide the additional required review as new potential proposed development comes online. So we don't have all the specific particulars because this is a unit count right now and a geographic dispersion as far as doing that review.
So does that suggest that the EIR evolves with additional projects beyond residential?
I'm sorry.
Does that suggest that the EIR is continually evolving? So the EIR is done with what is known today and with the assumed residential of today. And what I heard you say with future projects, those projects will be analyzed on the characteristics of those particular projects going forward?
There'll be an evaluation by the city to determine whether the program EIR covered all the considerations for a particular entitlement. Those details are not available right now.
Right.
It's a unit count right now that we're evaluating.
Right. Okay. So there could be future work on the EIR depending on what future projects are?
There could be follow-up review depending on what is being proposed for a particular property.
Okay.
And again, it's a master environmental clearance under the California Environmental Quality Act. It's called a program level environmental impact report. It's commonplace for downtown projects throughout California because the particulars of future entitlement may not be readily available. So there's a unit count, there's a geographic analysis, there's steps there to get further along through the clearance process.
Okay.
All right, I have one last question, comment. Under the hydrology and water quality, do you also analyze the availability of water, potable water, to support housing?
Under the public services review, the water purveyors are contacted as far as available water for the unit count that's being proposed. So that is part of our analysis to determine water availability.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ken.
To follow up on that project alternatives issue. So if I'm to understand it, because in the staff report under project alternatives, it says, alternatives may include the no project or reduced density alternative as an alternative. So basically, you're not just going to throw out alternatives, willy-nilly and just come up with them and say, hey, you could do this, you could do that. It's basically you're out evaluating the current proposed project for this downtown specific plan. And if you find that some particular item can't be mitigated in such a way to get rid of the negative impacts of that, you would provide a project alternative for that. So for example, the only reason you would come up with a no plan alternative, or let's not do anything, would be if you, at the end of the EIR, came up with the idea that there's no way to mitigate these impacts that are being as currently proposed.
It's a great question, and the response that is most appropriate is the reduced alternative is a requirement under the California Environmental Quality Act. Every EIR is required to look at I should say the no project. Let me clarify. So section 15126 of the California Environmental Quality Act requires a review of alternatives, and it includes the no project alternative. Every EIR has a no project alternative. It basically is a review and conclusion. If the project doesn't happen, everything stays the way it is. And so, so there's the no project, and then the goal per the guidelines is to look at reductions when you have red flagged an impact that has a potential for significance.
Okay, so typically say that we're changing the density requirement and you're looking at it and then you're saying, no, based on our analysis, if you change the density that way, it's going to cause this negative impact and we can't find a way to mitigate that other than changing that density number.
Yeah, and that's a good example, but we got to get there first. So.
And the other general question, and I'll save most of my questions until after the public have made their comments and we can hear what they have to say, but Laguna being what it is and being, a built out community more or less, we're not dealing with a blank slate here or, open farmland that we can do whatever we want. Here's our new plan for designing a city from scratch. That probably, if we are to make these revisions and change the downtown specific plan, the changes that will happen incrementally and probably one at a time, a project here, a project there. So how are you going to be able to evaluate or try to evaluate, the cumulative impact of miscellaneous projects that'll be happening in different areas of the downtown over time?
Under the guidelines, we are required to look at cumulative impacts, cumulative considerations. So we haven't gotten there quite yet as far as working with city staff, as far as what is the list of cumulative projects. And it's basically the here and now. When the notice of preparation is released, it's basically a stopping point. Okay, what are the possible range of cumulative projects and what do they consist of? And are they appropriate to be considered in the analysis for the project EIR? So we need to get further through the process to do that level of evaluation, but cumulative impacts is part of our review.
Okay, but to me, it seems like it's going to be a difficult process because you're trying, well, if you're going to the city and you're asking them, you know, what's in the pipeline right now, what possible projects are coming up, a lot of that's going to be based on whether or not these changes are made to the downtown specific plan. You know, developers, you know, are not going to make decisions now on the possibility of something maybe being approved in the future. So I just, you know, I don't envy you having to try to evaluate that. It seems like that's going to be a difficult
Yeah,
thing to
it
do.
is a process working with city staff. In the CEQA guidelines, basically there's a statement about speculation. Basically, speculation is frowned upon as far as guessing whether a project's going to be a consideration or, so there needs to be a definition of if there's something that should be considered in the cumulative projects list, what is the status? Is there an application that has been submitted? Where is that in the process? And geographically, where is that compared to the downtown plan? Is it within the downtown or is it outside the downtown? There is a process that we still haven't engaged in quite yet.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I've got a couple. On in terms of the alternatives, I mean, that's a very interesting topic, I think. And it sounds like there's kind of a boilerplate way these EIRs are done, and it's very kind of formulaic. And you look at traffic, and you look at parking, you look at air quality, and then you look, like you said, at alternatives that try and reduce those quantitative aspects of the plan. There's a lot of interest and concern, I think, amongst all of us about the qualitative impacts. Mm-hmm. And aesthetic and visual is one of your topics, and cultural is one of your topics. What tools can you utilize to help measure the aesthetic impacts and character impacts of this densification on the aesthetic and character of the downtown? Are there any?
It's a very good question. I actually don't like aesthetics all that much because it is a tough section because it depends on the pulse of a community. There are thresholds to measure the effects of aesthetic impacts, shade and shadows, a new building going to cast a shadow on a neighboring property, lighting, glare. Visual character has an element of subjectivity. It is difficult. One thing we look at are the general practices of the agency in looking at aesthetics. Historically, how has Laguna Beach looked at under their environmental review process? What are the standards that are considered when reviewing the issue of visual impacts, viewshed impacts, visual character? So we're just starting out, and we're figuring that out, working with the city as far as that level of analysis.
You're going to be doing simulations, and are the simulations like a massing that look at height and in sort of a 3D simulation of the whole downtown? And I know that EIRs are meant to sort of measure the worst case, right? You assume everything that could potentially be developed will develop, and all the heights that could be the highest will be the highest. In the simulations, are there opportunities of not? I know you have to do that, but could there be other alternatives in the simulations that assume maybe there's a criteria in the refinement of the specific plan that limits the number of units to 2 stories, or limits the number of units or building parcels to 3 stories, and that creates some kind of guidelines that keep that kind of maximum massing from happening? Is there any way you can incorporate things in your simulation to test those kinds of ideas?
It's a good question. I don't want to sound like I'm avoiding the question, because part of it is to receive testimony tonight and understand the comments and the response. And I am not a specialist on visual analysis. We have a team overall dedicated to that effort. It's an interesting question as far as how you can consider modifications in certain geographic areas. There is a massing level of review, and working with city staff, our team is pinpointing those exact locations in the downtown for before and after simulations, and how those can be adjusted. It's a good question, so we would need to look at it further.
And so in terms of tonight, listening to the community and when their input, that's the kind of thing you would be looking to hear, right? Or like, because potential mitigations is something that you need to develop. And so, ideas of mitigating some of these impacts, that's something that we could listen to tonight and you could potentially pursue.
Yeah.
Okay.
You nailed it. This is the range of feedback we're hoping to get as far as what if, did you consider this? Are you going to consider this? It's that type of
Exactly.
feedback.
Okay, so we will, this isn't a public hearing. There's no decisions being made tonight. There's no findings. This is really just a communication session between all of us and the staff, to the staff and consultants. So we'll open it up to public input. Now, can I see hands of those that plan on speaking? Okay, so it's not everybody. So in that case, we'll keep it at 3 minutes. If everybody raised their hands, we would not do that, but let's keep it to 3 minutes. We would also advise that if somebody else has already made your point, it's not essential that you make it again and again. And again, I would just clarify that this is not about whether the policies are good or bad. This is about how can we inform the consultant and staff on how to really evaluate these policies so that, we really understand, their implications. Okay, make sure you give your name and make sure you do the sign-in sheet. And keep in mind that there are cards to write input on as well. And, it's probably a good way of increasing your effectiveness is to both say it and write it, so it can be recorded in a couple different ways. Okay, please proceed.
Good evening. My name is Greg Viviani. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. I've been in town for 41 years, born and raised. My family's been here since the 1930s and 40s. You can say we love this place, and any way to keep our downtown Laguna charm the same, that would be a huge win. My immediate concern is to be included in this EIR process is as follows: the heightened danger to ingress and egress during fires, emergencies, or other disasters, especially during peak tourist season. Laguna Beach's geography, as we all know, features steep canyons, limited entrances of only 3 to our town, and downtown grid that funnels traffic onto bottlenecks. Summer and festival periods already see a massive influx of visitors, and the majority of over 7 million annual visitors come during this peak season, often swelling the effective population far beyond residents, clogging streets with cars, pedestrians, delivery vehicles, first responders. Adding more residential units downtown mean more permanent residents, employees, and associated traffic, plus greater demand on parking and access points. Wildfires like the 1993 fire and lessons from the events in the Palisades, Paradise, and Lahaina fire highlight how quickly evacuation can fail in similar terrain. The city's ongoing wildfire mitigation and fire safety plan needs to be immediately and aggressively be updated in 2026 with dozens of action items. Basically, peak season gridlock could turn a manageable incident into a tragedy, trapping visitors and locals alike. We cannot approve changes that amplify population without proven, robust, multi-route evacuation, remodeling, and infrastructure upgrades. Another equally critical concern of mine is the impact on our delicate coastline. Laguna Beach's iconic shoreline, bluffs, coves, delicate tide pools, and beaches support rich biodiversity, including protected habitats like the coastal sage scrub and intertidal zones. Downtown intensification brings more impervious surfaces, stormwater runoff, carrying pollutants into the ocean, construction-related sediment, and disturbance, and long-term pressures from increased foot traffic and beach access. With sea level rise and upstream urban development accelerating bluff and beach erosion and threatening low-lying areas. Added development removes natural buffers, increasing vulnerability to storms, and could necessitate armoring that further starves beaches of our sand. Our coastline is not resilient to endless growth. It's fragile. In summary, while housing is vital, the DSP Phase 2 must not come at the cost of our lives, our irreplaceable coastline, our quality of living, and we need thorough, in-depth studies of the things that I've brought up and rigorously analyzed worst-case scenario events. So thank
Great.
you.
Excellent input. You had about 15 items there, and I'm sure that we have multiple note-taking here and plus a recording, so.
Hi, my name's Larry Ring. I'm a long-time resident of Laguna Beach. And as a property owner on Mermaid, I can tell you that you cannot mitigate destroying the views of the homeowners on Mermaid Street, which will occur if you do all this massive multi-story development in the area. So I appreciate that you'll study it, but I can tell you right now that you cannot mitigate the loss of views of the homeowners in the areas surrounding the downtown district. The other thing I wanted to mention, most of which was covered by the previous speaker, but as a former firefighter here for Orange County in the coastal area up near Emerald Bay, I can assure you that between the risks of earthquake, fire, flood, and tsunami, all of which are extreme risks here in Laguna Beach because of the already existing population density, that anything you do to further increase the density is just going to get more people killed, especially since you're not providing transportation for those people by prohibiting them from having cars by proposing a half car per unit, when in fact, multiple cars per unit are what is actually required for people to be able to get out of the area when we have disasters in progress. So I just want to remind you that part of your responsibilities on the Planning Commission is to anticipate things that are not day-to-day occurrences, but things that are inevitable to occur within our community. Thank you.
It's an excellent point about the parking recommendations related to emergency events. So let's make sure that we get that jotted down. And Mr. Majoy, is your viewshed analysis going to be able to identify areas within the downtown that would be most impacted by massing and height increases? Okay.
We need to get with our team and just confirm all.
Right. Okay. Next, please. Thank you.
Hello, Ruben Flores. Piggybacking on the traffic, as a business owner on Coast Highway in the northern area, which seems to be a quieter area of Laguna, this last Saturday, it was packed. And there isn't really a season that we're not busy and a season that we are busy. It's just busy whenever the sun's out. And so that obviously is something that needs to be, I don't know how you look at that, because if you're looking at history, history doesn't tell you what's going on today. And so if you're looking at 10 years history, it's going to soften what you should do today. If you're looking at 1 year history, that's probably a little bit better. So I'm interested when you spoke about how broad do you go. Another issue is we don't seem to be able to get a balance between urban canopy and buildings. We keep taking a step backwards with trees. It seems like we lose 20% a year, and a lot of it is from building, from old age, I'm not sure what, but what we replace it with is bushes instead of trees. So I'm interested in what percentage do you think is a healthy percentage to have of a canopy versus the city itself? And are we looking to improve that, or are we just looking to equal what it is, because if we're going to go bigger in buildings and mass, we probably need to go for a 50% overage because we're losing them at the same time. One of the comments was made was that we're going to ask staff what their recommendations are. And my fear is that there's a lot of new staff, and who's going to be answering these questions. And there's been many errors by staff in the last year. And a couple of the errors were huge errors, and yet they were made by staff. So my question is, are you going to take a study and assess the errors in staff suggestions over the last 5 years to see how you're going to go ahead and take the suggestions of staff and then mitigate that number by the errors that staff has made? One of the things we need to take a look at is low-income housing. Let's just take it out of the downtown area and stop looking at the downtown to rescue the city. We did an interesting purchase of the community center in South Laguna over by Ruby's. Why don't we bite the bullet and do some housing inside of there? It already has parking. We need to apply standards that are particular to Laguna Beach, not particular to Orange County, not particular to Huntington Beach, because we are so different. We got our award or a designation as a unique landscape of the state of California. And so we can't really apply standards that are for everybody in the state.
Okay, thank you. Good points, all. Next.
Good evening, Nick Aronoff, fourth generation Laguna Beach resident. A lot of the other people here have said a lot of things that I agree with, and even the commissioners, Sadler and Kellenberg, you guys mentioned multiple things that I was already planning on talking about, which is great that it seems like you guys are trying to be on top of this and share the same concerns as the community. I think one thing that really jumped out to a lot of people is the number of units that we're trying to squeeze in, like maxing out like 400 to 600. I think that, jumps out to a lot of people with half a parking spot. When you consider the Act 5 lot is only 250 spaces, we're talking about double, or, 2 more of those, even if it's in a parking garage. But obviously, aside from the concerns of how realistic this sort of plan, downtown specific plan to meet these, mandates by the state, is what can be realistic. And, some people have said like, spreading it out. There's other areas of town that we can do this. So is it with the EIR, obviously maxing everything out? We need to make sure that study maxed out building, maxed time period during the year. We don't want an EIR in January, well, in a typical January, not this current January where it's 80 degrees. So we know when there's, how realistic it is for all these people. And I think we all know that it's unrealistic. One other thing that jumped out was like, if we can add like the firm cap on lot mergers. Right now we have small lots in town. If we end up being like, yo, you know what, we'll allow 2 stories in some areas. Well, what if a developer comes in and buys up a bunch of the lots, merges them together because we don't have those protections in? I think that's a big concern because, as we know, developers have sued the city before. And if it's available, if we sit there and say, oh, that probably won't happen, that probably will happen. So obviously the cap on the mergers, what are the alternatives? So instead of saying like, if we max everything out and, nothing will get done, well, we know the state of California isn't going to just let us protect this community and be like, okay, you guys are exempt. So what is like the actual minimum that we could do? Commissioner Dubin said, like, maybe is it extending out that arts district all the way to El Toro? Because that's not blocking views, oceanfront views there. That can be areas that this, we can develop into fitting in more housing and try to mitigate the village character of downtown, maybe even removing it completely. I don't think anybody wants affordable housing oceanfront above tight assets building because, what are we doing here, right? So mitigating that and maybe doing a whole the EIR in the back section, I know you guys have mentioned, what can we do? Things change constantly. I think there's still a lot of confusion in the community. There needs to be very clear, hey guys, this is the next step. What's the timeline going to be so people don't carry that fear throughout the year, so we know where things are at, and we would all appreciate more open communication on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good points.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Dwyer. I'm a 38-year resident of Laguna Beach. I live on St. Anne's Drive, and I will not use up all of my time. My question is that you're taking on yeoman's work here to do 20 different categories across such a broad spectrum. And are you going to be dealing with, it seems to me that you have to deal with the city, Coastal Commission, and the state of California, if not the feds, but at least 3 entities. And are you going to be going, I noticed that you are going worst case scenario in some of your estimates of the build outs, et cetera. Are you going to be going to the most restrictive of the 3 of those, and how exactly can that work? Thank you.
Okay. Well, we'll try and answer questions at the end of public input. So let's track that question. Next, please.
Hi, my name is Christy Armstrong, and I'm a resident of Laguna Beach. My husband was born or raised here pretty much all his life. I think that you mentioned that in the EIR report, there can be alternatives. And I don't know if the city has ever looked into possibly working out, since we are an impacted city already, our build out is as much as we can go, especially with the threat of flooding and fires, which, hopefully we won't have, but it looks like we will, the way environmental situations are going now, that we work with other cities in the surrounding area that have the room to build out, that we can share some of, kind of like what companies do when they want to get something environmentally passed and they use another piece of property as what's that called, Casey?
Carbon offset.
Pardon me? Well, no, not mitigation. Anyway.
Off-site mitigation.
Well, that could be. But if we work with the state of California, if someone and a representative of the city goes to the state of California and says, we are built out, we are impacted, how can we take our numbers that you're requiring us to do and share them with cities around us? And then what we can do is set up transportation to bring those people back into the city so they have access and they have opportunity to come to the beach, to downtown, and we don't have that impact on our downtown. I think that's someone else mentioned St. Catharines, the property that the city bought. That would be a great place for additional housing. The church on Glen Eyrie, that was talked about being built out. I don't agree with that, but I would like to see that building used and repurposed as housing and keep it historical. So those are some other alternatives where we can bring some housing in without bringing it into downtown and risk having an impact on our downtown right now.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Hi, I am Caitlin Wilhoy. I was born and raised here, so I've been here for 36 years. I know we need more units, but I'm confused as to why we're only looking in the downtown area, which is the most congested area. Parking and traffic is terrible, even when it isn't sunny. If you try and leave the canyon between 3 and 5 p.m., you are stuck in traffic. I feel like we should be looking at all of Laguna, identifying distressed or underutilized properties and giving those properties opportunities to rezone and identifying them as housing opportunity zones, and rezoning more commercial retail properties into live work properties. There's a lot of empty retail. There's a lot of places outside of downtown that are empty that could all be rezoned. That's it.
Thank you. Next up,
My name is John Marashi. Curious why we only are limited to February 25th to make any public sharing of the information, because this just came up. That's my question.
okay.
Good evening, Mary Locatelli. I'm given to understand that in 2002, over 20 years ago, Laguna performed a similar EIR. That one was done in connection with the goal of increasing downtown flood capacity. And in that case, the city was in line to receive significant outside funds to complete the project. But ultimately, the council walked away. Why? Some say in large part because of concerns that the costs to remediate found contaminants could be significant. The pollutants found were largely petrochemical in nature, considered to be primarily due to the old 10,000-gallon underground city emergency diesel fuel tank and other nearby gas stations. The city learned that both the water and adjacent soils would need to be remediated, and they also learned that the remediation costs might be significant and would be on the city's dime. So what's changed today? If the city has reason to believe that this EIR would show different results, or the remediation cost to the city would be considerably less than what was thought in 2002, either because of improved technology or some other reason, it should let the public know about that. If not, I wonder why the city would proceed to spend more money on this EIR, especially in light of last Friday's in-depth discussion of the city's current financial situation. So I don't really want to necessarily say this in connection with this project, but I'm reminded of an old Woody Allen saying that Woody Allen had a word for doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. He called it insanity. Let's not be insane here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up,
Jerome Pudwill, resident for 38 years. I'll be all over the map. Yes, the number of cars is ridiculous. We all know that. You know as well as I do that some of these will be 2 cars per unit. So you do the math, you could come up as much as 900 cars if you really want to push the numbers, which means, of course, there would be a new parking structure, la-di-da, which really right now is being prepared for tourists. That's the real thrust of that matter. Aesthetically, looking at the city and culturally, the idea of putting all those units in the downtown area, you're talking about demolishing the existing buildings and putting up stucco boxes. You know as well as I do, the credo for developers is build cheap, sell high, and stucco is master. And if you don't believe that, take a look at Better Buzz and how that's worked out. There was no respect for the cultural aesthetic value of this town. And it was fast-tracked. So what do we expect to come from after that? My understanding is that the flood study that was done was based on a 25-year flood. How often are we going to have 100-year floods anymore? And they're taking out the curbs. So this needs to be considered. My question is, how independent is the study going to be from the EIR? Are they going to have access and be looking at the studies that have been prepared by the city, or are they going to be totally independent and blind? I think that'll do it.
okay, thank you for your input.
Good evening. My name is Jacob Cherub. I've been here in Laguna Beach for 39 years and have seen changes, as we all have. And I think that, unfortunately, there have been accelerating changes. I think the basic thing that I'm wondering about is, and I think it's a valid question, what is our intent? What would we like to see 10 years from now, 20 years from now, into the future? Because I think we lost sight of that fact. We've all moved to Laguna Beach because of the way we found it to be. A quaint town with human services, citizen services, a responsive city council and boards, and that's been changing. I think that began with COVID, which screwed so many things up, but I think it threw a dagger into how our town has been run. And it's not changed from that.
And you're relating your comments to the EIR process, right?
Sure.
Okay.
But Commissioner, I think that I am speaking about the EIR.
Okay.
I've never seen this gentleman before, and he's coming, and our town is in his hands right now. Of course, there are some controls that we all have, but what is his intent? Who are his masters? I look back at, I'm looking at the promenade and the way that has been foisted upon the entire town for the benefit of few. And it was done in a very dishonest, deceptive manner. That is, piecemealed it. Oh, we were supposed to have meetings and workshops, and none of that was followed. And I will tell you now that none of us know what the point, what's going to happen there in the ensuing years. Chairman, I remember you said at one of the early meetings when they brought the two plans, and you used the words, you said, you know, this is all for the tourists.
I don't believe I said that, but continue.
I'll bring that to you because you're right. The way that it's being developed, that is not for residents. That is for tourists and several restaurants. That's it. Tony Eisman calls it a future food court. I agree that that's what it's going to be. Let me just say, we've had many attempts. Some have gone far to put up a parking structure. And if we take away all the parking spaces on Forest Avenue and all the parklets and all that, it's like we're like the chap who murdered his parents and then came to the court and wanted the court's mercy because he's an orphan. So we have set this up for ourselves.
Okay, let's wrap it.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Chair, if we could remind people to stay on topic, that would be.
I did.
I mean, all the other stuff has been litigated a billion times.
Well, I think Jacob is trying to talk about the character of our town and how important it is, and our consultant mentioned that he's here to hear that. And I'd like to bring up the historic American landscape. And I urge the consultants to read that. There's a book that we've published about why Laguna Beach and the Greenbelt is a historic American landscape that's been recognized by the National Park System. And that document is housed in the Library of Congress. And Laguna Beach is a special place. It is like a Yosemite. It is like a precious national and international resource that we are responsible for during our brief lifetimes. And we can't just entertain these radical changes to our town without thinking about how responsible we are with keeping this special character of our place intact and protecting it. So I urge the consultant to look at the historic features of the downtown. And there's a list in the downtown specific plan of historic buildings, which is not complete. Staff, if you're going to consult with staff, they're instructed to take some of those historic buildings off the list. And we need to have them all on the list. And we need to be sure that there are no more historic buildings that have not been inventoried. That all has to be on there. And we have to recognize that when you add more stories, you don't just plop more stories on top of a historic building in the first place, because the whole historic character will be gone. But structurally, you will not be able to do that. And so that means the whole building will be gone and some whole new building will be there. And the construction impact of pulling teeth all over downtown is huge. And the overtime impact of constant pulling teeth downtown. You know, it's like those implants. That's what we're going to get, an implant in the downtown. So I hope that is a huge impact, because there'll be continual disturbances over time. And instead of preservation, we'll have constant destruction. So if you read that book, you will see what we value in the character of our town. There's whole chapters on it, and I hope that you will consult it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I live on Glen Eyrie, and we've been
Your name?
undergrounding forever.
Name?
And to my north is a house that was a minor remodel. And I have been living with noise and dirt like crazy for a year and a half. So I want you to fast forward to Forest Avenue. One other thing, try to put some thing on my roof, but it's not strong enough. My house is 100 years old, so maybe those buildings downtown are 50 years old or 60 years old. But what's coming is a town of perpetual construction, perpetual noise, dirt, and so forth. And we're putting a burden on the stores that aren't being remodeled. And we're certainly not welcoming people. I think our first responsibility is to take a look at this. I mentioned this to someone downtown. She said, this afternoon, she said, oh, I didn't know that. And she said, there's no way you could put another story on this building. It will collapse. And that's what I think you're going to find is a third story means take it to the ground. So there are other places to put housing. You know, my question is, do we have a gun to our head? Is this Sacramento forcing us to do this, or do we think it's really a good idea? Could it possibly be a good idea? There are other places in town where we could put housing. We could take the third and fourth level of the hospital and put that as senior housing, affordable housing, and so forth, even if we have to pay for a retrofit, which wouldn't be as expensive as a retrofit for the hospital, because it would be a different kind of a structure. But the heart of the town is Forest Avenue, and I don't know if we're going to change the name when we take out the trees, but it seems that it needs to be respected. And can we trust that the wealth that surrounds us won't come in with ideas that have nothing to do with who we are? So it's very, very scary what's being proposed.
Thank you.
Greetings. My calling is Ryan. Marbury versus Madison says the act of legislator repugnant to the Constitution is void. Commandeering land, forcing things upon people is commandeering, and it's dangerous. And I'm here to speak to the people because they're the ones that have the lawful ability to hold men and women lawfully accountable for harm. And putting in high rises and high density housing will harm all who live here. I'm placing the following notice into the public record. The entity known as City of Laguna Beach is proposing actions that threaten the public safety, and that alone triggers a duty to stop, reassess, and fully disclose. Laguna Beach's charm, value. It is a quaint little city. I came from Culver City, and over 13 years, I watched suits like this guy show up and present things, and all of a sudden they wanted to build up. You can see no landscape. There is no city anymore. My last vision was a human being pooping on the sidewalk until I moved here. And it's beautiful here. I'd like it to stay that way. I'm placing notice that any proposal for increased height or density must be treated first and foremost as a public safety coastal impact issue, not reduced to housing numbers or compliance language. Traffic, emergency evacuation. When I got here, we had to evacuate. It took forever. Laguna Beach has narrow roads, well-known choke points. Adding major density near downtown increases congestion and puts lives at risk, especially during wildfire evacuation emergency response. I require serious, transparent analysis of evacuation capacity, fire access, and response times. And we should have our own independent assessment too, aside from the suits. The idea that this town must accept increased danger simply because they think they have to comply with a state legislation is unreasonable. That's where Marbury versus Madison comes in. You sit here to represent the people of this town, not to place them in harm's way. I appreciate the voices that ask some questions too, and I appreciate people leaning into the microphone. I can't hear very well. I couldn't hear hardly anything he said. He talks like this. Downtown Laguna is already at and beyond functional capacity during tourist season. Traffic regularly reaches a standstill. Water, wastewater, utilities, parking, overflow, neighborhoods, all of those are strained. The environmental assessment, yeah, we just talked about that. Consistency with Laguna's adopted rules and obligations. Why are we changing them now? We need a very clear reason why, and I don't feel like it's been very much transparency. And especially public notice. I found out this from another person. I didn't hear anything. I don't know any of my neighbors who got notices that they were having this meeting here, that we were going to discuss this. Nobody even knows what's going on, which tells me something's going on under the table. Okay? We're all learning this. The lack of clear, broad outreach undermines
Okay,
trust.
let's go ahead and wrap it up.
Yeah, you know what? There were some other people here who came up for 2 seconds. So, and
No,
you told me
you're
about
given,
other
you're given,
gentlemen
you're
to
given
curb what he was saying too.
3 minutes, and you've used your 3
Yeah,
minutes.
I understand what
so-
you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm saying that they didn't use all their time. So you don't, and you
That-
let
that's-
us people
that's not-
talk a
that's-
couple seconds over.
As I
So
did-
You can calm down for just a minute and let me finish my words. Okay?
Please
That's
wrap
very-
it. Please wrap it up as soon as you
My
can.
notice is simple. Do not normalize high-rise or high-density scale development in Laguna Beach.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Have we exhausted the audience? No, please. Yes, please. Everybody, can speak.
Hi there. Good to see you guys. Marcus Skindarian here. I've been here in Laguna since 1968, and I came here just to kind of listen and find out what this was all about. And I guess the biggest thing I had heard tonight, I've heard a lot of good things, but my biggest concern was, I forget what this gentleman's name is, but you had said you don't like aesthetics. And it just really made me uncomfortable, our town, that you don't like aesthetics and you're guiding this mission. And I don't know if that's what you meant by it, but I want to plead with you that please, in this endeavor, that you please take an appreciation for aesthetics in our town. I think Ann touched on it, and it's just a huge part of it. I just think that's important, and I just wanted to say that. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi, I'm Dawn Winson, and I just found out about the meeting from a neighbor from a text. So, we love this town. This town is a beautiful town. That is the street of this town. It is gorgeous. It is special. You all are here because of that. It is not like anywhere else. And you bring housing into that just to stack them up. Somebody's going to make a lot of money. I'm sure that's great for somebody, but it will ruin the town for, like they said, international. People love this place. It is very, very unique. And to just change that for housing or money or whatever, it's changed forever if you do that. You have options. You are smart. You can meet this requirement in other ways. You know you can. And I don't know what's driving all this, but I'm sure money is in there. But there's other ways, like if it's just the downtown owners that are going to make a lot of money, that's still not worth it. You can find other places to put the housing like other people recommended. So you can do this. You can meet your goals. There's other ways. This is a very, very special place. And I beg you, I'm pleading with you. My husband doesn't like begging, but I would ask you, please don't do this. Don't do this. Let it be. Let Laguna Beach be the beautiful place it is. Maybe we need to have some rules where people have to, if they have their houses or their shops vacant, they need to lower the prices so that, or pay some taxes. That's what someone in the UK said, is that if you don't generate revenue for the city, you need to do that somehow. But I'm just saying we have vacant places, and that's a problem.
Are
We
there
understand.
ways the EIR can address those issues?
I don't know because I just found out about this, but I am so hopeful that you guys love this town the way I do and all these people do. And I'm so hopeful that you will just dismiss this whole thing with disrupting downtown. So thank you very much. And I have.
Thanks for your comments. Okay, going once, going twice. Is anybody else going to speak? Okay.
Let it be known that nobody.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You need to be at the podium to address the council, the commission. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Mark Orgel, Laguna Beach City Council. There's a couple of things I wanted to mention, and I'm tempted to have a conversation with you guys, except I know Pat will remind me that this isn't the time for conversation. So keep me on track if I go astray, Pat. I appreciate everybody's passion, and I guess because of my experience both in private sector and since I've been on council, I think that we can use this to our advantage, actually. And I think that all of the comments that were made tonight were perfect. I'm quite impressed, actually. And I'm impressed at the demeanor and the community's had. And I think that everybody's done a really good job. And there's, when we lose context of things because there's such time lapse between so much of what we do, our housing element, for instance, was done some time ago, and now this is actually in response to the new housing accountability laws, right? Well, these folks out here, everybody's living their daily lives and things go on. And 3 years later, now we're evaluating the downtown. The housing element was originally created to sprinkle, opportunities, zoning opportunities throughout the entire town. And some of the comments that came before us tonight, referenced why don't we, find other places. Well, in fact, years ago, we did look at other alternatives, and we did find them, and they are in our housing element. So I won't get into the rest of the detail regarding that particular item, but I think what I'm going to try to do is work with Dave Kiffin and see if we can't put together a better way to constantly or continually keep some of these conversations in context, and also a way that we can have an ongoing question and answers that are available to the community. And I apologize for a lot of you that didn't get noticed about this evening. I know that we try. I'm thinking maybe we should put our contact information up there, Dave, so we can in the future make sure that people have access to our text notices that go out. I'm constantly trying to encourage people to make sure that they give us their emails so they're on our database so we can do outreach. And I want to assure the community that we are trying, and I do think that we can make the best out of this. I don't see any big effort to ruin the downtown by any means. there are areas in the art district, which is part of the downtown specific plan. So is some of the streets around here, which, you could probably put a little housing here and there. The art district could probably hold quite a bit. So without ruining our core downtown is my point. So I think that this is our chance to get this data, sit down, have some workshops, work with you all here to just find out, what's appropriate and what the area can handle, what it can't. But I have faith in the process, and I'll do my best to make sure that we can communicate the best that we can to the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, on that basis, we'll close public input and we will open public input one more time.
Sorry, I did stand up, but I appreciate, sorry, I'm Dave Kiff, I'm the city manager. I'm also a resident. This will be my 24th year here. I wanted to thank the consultant team that's working on this and the staff and the commission certainly, and all the people who came to comment. I mean, I think we take your comments very seriously. We take the comments and the obligation by the staff to support this process appropriately with more transparency. And as the mayor said, I think it's always difficult to get the word out to everybody at the right time. And that's what's nice about the CEQA process is this is early. And that's what the CEQA process is for, as the consultant noted. It's to invite that public comment and invite the dialogue. And to reinforce what Mark said, I'm excited to have this dialogue with the community. It's an important one. It's an essential one. And it's also essential because people need to understand what we're up against. And we talk a lot about just general state mandates, but there's very specific things that the state can do if we're not meeting the obligations of our housing element. And one of those things is called builder's remedy. And I urge everybody to go home and read about it. Read a New York Times article from November about builder's remedy in Beverly Hills and how impactful that has been to that community and will be to that community because they didn't have a certified housing element, that didn't identify the right sites, and that therefore what the state says, what builder's remedy says is any developer can come in and build virtually anything as long as there's an affordable housing component to it. And it could be 9 stories, it could be 8 stories, it could be 10 stories. That's what we're up against if we don't do this right. I'm confident that we can do it right and we can do it thoughtfully, but we need everybody's involvement in that. And it will involve more housing throughout the community, just like our housing element says. But I'm confident that Laguna is uniquely positioned to accomplish that. Again, thank you everybody for being here. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, we will now close input. I would like, could we answer a couple of the questions? I think one of them was just answered very well twice, and that is, why aren't we looking outside of downtown? And the answer is, the housing element absolutely does look outside of downtown. This is just one part of the total, and there's so many units that are required by the housing element that this is a part of a larger equation. Some of the other questions, one was about to what degree are we integrating with other agencies on this? There's the city, there's the Coastal Commission, there's the state. Can you address that?
In the sense that the public review process.
We can't hear you.
The public review process does include notification to all stakeholders, including public agencies. So they've received notice. We've mailed out the NOP to them directly. They're a part of the review and they would provide.
So you'll be getting comments from all those agencies, and this will also go to the Coastal Commission for their review?
Correct.
Right. So
Final
they are a part of the process.
They've also are included in the review. They can provide comment at this time, and then final certification will also go through the Coastal Commission.
For instance, if the parking criteria that we have, if they think it is inadequate of providing parking, they can raise their hand and say that doesn't work. Yeah,
well,
exactly.
I think also the question was, what parameters were you assuming? Were you assuming their most conservative parameters in what you were doing? I don't recall who asked the question, but my note on that question was, that was the essence of the question. Of the other authorities, what parameters are you assuming of theirs? Not just that they get to comment on it, but where the starting point is in your assumptions.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take a stab at that question. When it does come to solicitation, so each one of these notices, so we had a notice of preparation sent out to key stakeholders and responding agencies. So that includes neighboring jurisdictions, it includes any of the utility providers. And as a part of the data gathering portion of the data collection, we're really going through and asking them about all the factors about the services that are being provided right now. So if you were reaching out to fire department, for instance, you'd be looking at response times, both under the current number and also looking at the analysis based on additional units developed within that specific plan area. So we're going through as a part of this process and identifying each of those data sources, collecting it from the appropriate bodies, whether it's going to be a city agency or any other type of local, regional, or even state agency if it applies. That does inform the draft environmental impact report that would then go out for public circulation again. Not only are we going through and including the information on our own local city website that we're maintaining up to date for this phase 2 update, but the notice of availability is posted with the state clearinghouse. It goes out to the county recorder, so the County of Orange recorder's office with all of our other notices. And then we're going to be having additional community meetings throughout this entire process. So there's a lot of different pieces that are coming together. It does start with data collection, and that's part of this step here is if we're looking at key stakeholders, members of the public that have information, they might be aware of situations where we don't necessarily have adequate facilities, right? Maybe they've had service interruptions. Those are things that we can go ahead and have conversations with the utility providers to find out if it's a shortcoming that is a one-off, or is it something that needs to be considered as we're looking at the possible increase in units long-term. So it helps us guide some of those conversations and dig a little bit deeper. So that really is the point of being able to take testimony, is understand what are we working with right now and how can we find the data to be able to better inform our document.
Thank you. One of the questions is, why do we only have until February 25th to provide input? Can you answer that question?
The public review period is it's a 30-day review period that began on January 26th. So 30 days from that would land on.
But that isn't the only time that the public can have input. There's going to be multiple times the public can have input, correct?
Correct. But
Yeah,
for the
right.
public.
This is just input on the scoping parameters, but there's going to be multiple workshops and hearings where the public can continue to comment and try and react to the policy. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's open it up to final recommendations to the consultant and thoughts on this scoping exercise. Should we start left to right?
Okay. You always throw me under the bus, don't you?
Well, you're always so good at it.
Yeah. I just have kind of a comment, and I want to reassure, first of all, we have looked at all over town. This commission has looked at presentations of other locations brought to us by, I think, the Housing and Human Services Committee, as well as staff. So we're just focused tonight on the DSP, and it sounds like, we haven't investigated other areas of town, which in fact we have, and those things are not off the table by any means. I also want to remind everybody that whether this is adopted or not, or it evolves into something that becomes the guiding force for development in the downtown, that there will still be review processes. There'll be discretionary review on projects. I don't think folks who own buildings in the downtown area are going to jump on either redevelopment or anything else. It's very expensive, and those projects aren't going to just be rubber stamped. There will be discretionary review happening. So just keep that in mind. In my comments, my input I made earlier, I think were noted. I'd like to think that we could all disagree and be respectful of each other. I don't like seeing people point fingers at our invited guests. I think that's inappropriate, and that's my comment.
I don't have anything substantive to add. I would say a couple of things. I really appreciate all of the input, everyone coming tonight, spending the time. We've been here almost 2 hours. It's very important to hear all the opinions in order to get this EIR rolling. And all of your comments will be addressed and answered in the through the EIR process. The builder's remedy was the one topic that I was going to talk about, and our city manager addressed that. That is what is really scary. And if we don't have a housing element and we don't allot a certain number of houses, which are required for us to do under state law, builder's remedy will take over, and there is no way to control that. So finally, what I would say is get involved, stay involved, look at the city website, and stay positive.
Ken?
Our goal here is limited into, evaluating this environmental impact report and its scope and all that. Regarding the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, requires different things of different projects. There's many projects that have been gone through town where there's exemptions to CEQA, and you just don't have to do any environmental analysis. There's times where I think, the city maybe has given those exemptions maybe where they shouldn't have, and maybe we should have done further evaluation for certain projects. This project definitely requires, an environmental impact report, which is the highest level of CEQA analysis that there can be. So the city's doing its proper process here in doing that. I think, as was outlined with the 20 or something different areas to be evaluated, certain areas, as was pointed out in the staff report and by the consultant, the agricultural and forestry aspect of it, resources, that doesn't really come into play. The mineral resources part of it doesn't really come into play. Other things regarding, the biological and cultural resources and tribal resources probably don't come into play as much and don't have as large of an impact here in an area that's been developed to the point it has. It was mentioned that there's previous EIR reports that were done, in the early 2000s for the same general area, which probably covered some of these, paleontology, resources. They haven't changed in the last 20-something years. The tribal resources, that evaluation, I'm sure, hasn't changed much over the last 20 years. So some of that legwork has already been done. So I just want, my comment would be, I just want as thorough and comprehensive of analysis as possible, and that, the city does everything it can to nail this thing down so that it's bulletproof and it can't be assailed later on. And I think that's the goal. Certain things are outside of our control. The state of California has mandated certain things regarding regional housing needs, and each city is allocated a number, and it's just not possible, as one speaker suggested, for the city of Laguna Beach to say, can't we outsource that to somewhere else? Can't we ask Irvine to fulfill our regional housing need number? Which is, I forget exactly what the number is, but it's between, for this whole city, we were allocated 300 to 400 units or something. And there it is. So then, what the EIR is going to be, and that's going to be spread out over the entire city of Laguna Beach, not in just downtown, but they're taking a conservative approach towards doing the environmental impact report, saying, well, what if we have, you know, this large number of houses located downtown, which very unlikely to ever happen, you know. But so that's, you know, that we have to respond to that. We have to do that. And the city has done that. We do have a certified housing element where other cities, as has been pointed out, haven't, and then they're under the threat of this builder's remedy. So that, you know, that's something we absolutely want to avoid. But, you know, further impacting the cities, here we're allocated 300 or 400 units. City of Irvine has to come up with like 10,000 units or something. And what is that going to do to the city of Laguna Beach? And what control do we have over that? That's a whole nother question. And that's part of, I hope, what this environmental impact report will consider when they're talking about traffic and other impacts. How is, you know, where are those extra 10,000 people in Laguna Beach going to want to come, or in Irvine going to want to come when they want to come to the beach? They're going to come down Laguna Canyon. They're going to want to come here. So, you know, some of this stuff is out of our control, but will potentially impact us as we evaluate these other items. So I think that should be all folded into this review as well. How are these outside forces also impacting us, and how does that work in our analysis here of these proposed changes? So that's really my bottom line. I just want a thorough and comprehensive review done.
I don't have much to add, although very interesting point on the impact of all the housing units in the neighboring communities on us, because there'll be a great use of our resource, you know, which they don't have. I saw our mission tonight to review and comment on the study of the impacts and mitigations, and I think, you know, we've talked about that and we've gotten good comments. So you can go out and do a thorough review of that. In my mind, the real work comes when you actually present those impacts and mitigations, and, you know, hopefully the public will participate in that as eagerly as they have here, and we'll have good dialogue on that, because that's really where the work begins, in going over your findings and what you do find. But I'm convinced that in terms of the scope of what you're doing, it seems thorough, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results of it.
Thank you. EIR is a crude instrument. I think if we were doing a strip shopping center, it would be great, you know, a tool to evaluate the impacts. But that's not what Laguna Beach is. It is, you've heard it tonight. It's very, and you already know that. You know that it's a unique animal, and there's subtleties and complexities in the built environment here that create the incredible value to the residents and to the public at large, the 6 or 7 million people that visit here. I think you have a challenge, because I know that you have books on your shelves this thick that tell you how to do an EIR in California, and it's very, you know, it's very restrictive and very structured. And so my plea would be that you work hard to work within those parameters in a manner that are reflective of the nuance of the character of the downtown and the study area, and specifically in terms of the cultural and aesthetic resources. And I just, you know, for instance, I wish there was a way that we could do an inventory of the plots downtown that you know, categorized, because there's great architecture and very valuable buildings, and there are also some pretty ugly buildings, you know, in Laguna Beach that I drive by and go, God, I wish somebody would redevelop that into something a lot more pleasant. And I wish there was a way that we could build into this system a way of creating soft and hard areas that we don't want to touch, areas that we don't mind as much. And so I'm kind of challenging staff a little bit to think about that, you know. And is there a way that this analysis could think creatively of how to, and I would put this under the category of mitigation. You know, is there a mitigation, are there mitigation tools that can soften, that both allow us to meet this housing element mandate that we have hanging over us, but also do it in a way that is sensitive relative to, the character, of our town. So that would be my request, that we think about that. I would also request that in doing the simulations, that we just don't do a worst-case simulation. We look at massing scenarios that, assume not full build-out, because I think that will be informative. And there might be some way of thinking about how to move the redevelopment, if to the extent there is some, in the direction within a more subtle, more varied kind of building envelope texture, rather than sort of broad brushes, which is what the current height, diagrams kind of assume. So with those final comments, I think you got a lot of input tonight. I know you're all taking notes, and I think we really owe it to the people here tonight to find a way of addressing everything that was brought up, even if it can't be addressed in a certain way, explain that, why it can't be, either for legal or practical terms. So with that, yes, Samantha.
Thank you. I'd just like to invite the audience one more time. Anyone that might have spoken or would be interested in additional information and being apprised of what's happening with the downtown specific plan update, please make sure that you sign in on the specific form. So the actual sign-in sheet, the email addresses provided there will be directly communicated with throughout the entire process. That is the list that we're using each time that we have one of these notices available that might not require direct mailing. So anytime we have these public meetings, additional points of contact, that there will be an email blast that will go out to that broader group. So please check the list, please sign in. If you do have people that would like to be added to that list, we can go ahead and do that as well. And that's how we're going to continue to communicate with members of the public outside of a mandatory noticing requirement.
Okay, there are no motions, there are no findings, there are no decisions tonight. So if nobody objects, I will close this particular item on the
Can I just
agenda.
ask one final question? Samantha, so the next meeting that would be on this issue would be when the EIR is completed, and we anticipate that being towards the end of this year?
So we actually have multiple touch points for different elements of the project. So the phase 2 update, it not only looks at the policy components, which will have community workshops that are taking place more, I would say, much sooner than when we have other materials available. The environmental document will have the draft environmental impact report available for review and input again. And then that would then come back as we have a final draft environmental impact report at the same time as we are approaching those public hearings. As far as other prongs of this project, we're looking at the policy components, and that would be done through community workshops and other related meetings. So it really just depends on which prong we're talking about, and all of that's communicated through the centralized DSP Phase 2 update page we have on our city website.
Great, thank you.
Okay, do we need to take a break?
Probably, let's let everybody clear out. Yeah.
Do we need to take a break?
5 minutes.
Okay, yeah, so let's take a 5-minute break.
Thank you to
Thank you, everybody, for
Kate
being here.
and the consultant for your attention and
So Chair, I just want to be sure people are more than welcome to stay, but if you're not here for this agenda item and like to keep talking
You
about
don't,
the
you don't have to clear the room, but we do need to move on. Okay, the next item, well, we're missing a couple of commissioners, so let's wait.
Are we back on? Yeah. And so, yeah, Chair, so the next item is consent calendar, correct? And do we want to wait for Commissioner Whiten?
Yeah.
Got it.
Next item. Oh, that's very impressive. You get extra points. Okay, the next item is the consent calendar, item number 5. There are 3 items on the consent calendar. Would anybody on the commission like to pull any of those items?
Yeah, I'd like to pull item 5.3. I had a comment regarding the January 21st, 26th Planning Commission draft minutes. And that is just on item 5.3 of that agenda, which was the Woods Cove Inn. Under the final comments, under my comment, it at the last sentence, it just said that I had concerns regarding the color palette. And I believe I kind of further expounded on that, saying I had issues regarding the proposed color palette with regards to design review criterion, neighborhood compatibility, and design integrity. That's it.
Thank you. Any other, would anybody in the public like to pull a consent calendar item? If not, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
And just to be clear, that's with the modification as noted by Commissioner Sadler.
Exactly.
Perfect.
I'll second.
Commissioner Sadler?
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten?
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin?
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Goldman?
Yes.
Chair Kellenberg?
Yes. Okay, the next agenda item is 6.1, conditional use permit 2024-2667, and a variety of other components associated with this item. Do we have any disclosures?
I met with the applicant team on site.
Yeah, I met with the applicant team as well on Tuesday afternoon.
I met with the applicant team as well, and I formally worked with the applicant.
I met with the applicant team as well.
As did I. I think we all met, and
They didn't have nice things to say about you.
I was last, so I know you're making that up. But I did ask them about you. Okay, so we'll hand it over to staff to make a presentation.
All right, thank you. So good evening, Chair Kellenberg and members of the Planning Commission. This evening, I'll be presenting item 6.1, a proposal for the remodel of the Laguna Surf Lodge, formerly known as the Laguna Riviera Hotel, located at 825 South Coast Highway. The applicant proposes a refresh of the existing 41-room hotel in the C1 local business district, consisting of modest remodel and operational updates that do not expand the building footprint or result in an intensification of use. The project includes facade improvements, updated signage, establishment of a valet parking plan, and amendments to an existing conditional use permit to update food and alcoholic beverage service restrictions without increasing the intensity of the use. 4 entitlements support this remodel, including conditional use permit 24-2667 to establish the valet parking and amend CUP 11-28 regarding food and alcoholic beverage service, design review 24-2666, including several exterior modifications of the existing hotel complex, coastal development permit 25-0296, including the replacement of deck railings within the bluff top setback in their existing locations, and sign permit 24-2668, including the installation of 1 freestanding sign and 2 wall signs. Collectively, these actions modernize the hotel's appearance and operations while maintaining its current scale and function. The project is situated on an irregularly shaped parcel at the intersection of South Coast Highway and St. Anne's Drive and includes an existing private pre-coastal act oceanfront accessway. This is the stairs all the way down to the beach. The property is located within the C1 local business district, which permits a variety of commercial uses, including hotels, subject to the approval of a conditional use permit. As a coastal property, the parcels fall within both the coastal and the water quality environmentally sensitive area. However, the limited scope of the proposed improvements is not expected to result in any adverse environmental impact. The site has undergone incremental changes over several decades, including beginning as individual residences and gradually transitioning into Laguna Riviera Hotel through a series of additions completed prior to the adoption of the California Coastal Act in 1976. In recent years, improvements have focused on essential maintenance, including deck replacements, HVAC upgrades, and seismic retrofits completed between 2006 and 2024. Additional upgrades, such as guest room renovations, the relocation of the lobby and bistro from the former office location, and accessibility enhancements within the parking area and throughout the site were processed ministerially. These improvements do not require discretionary review, and construction is currently underway. A Phase 1 historical assessment was prepared for this property and determined that the property does not meet state or national eligibility criteria for historic listing. Therefore, no CEQA impacts to historic resources were identified. A valet parking and guest services plan is proposed to establish valet operations for the existing 41-room hotel, with all 34 on-site spaces managed exclusively by valet. The plan maintains the property's legal non-conforming parking status, utilizing 33 standard spaces and 1 additional valet efficient space without increasing the hotel's intensity of use or triggering any additional parking requirements. Valet service will operate 24 hours a day for registered guests, supported by safe, well-signed circulation and on-site management. Guest mobility is further enhanced through a complimentary downtown shuttle, coordinated rideshare access, and continuous overnight valet and security coverage. The applicant is requesting an amendment to CUP 11-28 to update how food and alcoholic beverage services are administered under the existing Type 70 license. A Type 70 ABC license in California is an on-sale general license for hotels, allowing alcoholic beverage service exclusively to registered guests and their invited guests. The changes primarily clarify guest definitions, expand service areas to include reconfigured lobby bistro, and the resort guest areas, looking more at those open lawn spaces. The modernized outdated conditions without increasing this modernizes outdated conditions without increasing the intensity of the use itself. Staff supports these operational updates, but does not support expanding service to the general public, as this would constitute an intensification requiring additional parking that the site cannot provide. With only 34 legal non-conforming spaces, 10 fewer than the required if it were parked under today's code, opening the bistro to non-guests would require additional parking for the restaurant use that the property cannot provide. For this reason, staff recommends that the food and beverage service remain limited to registered hotel guests as an ancillary amenity, though updated language as shown in attachment 9 is supported by staff. The proposed project proposes an exterior refresh that replaces the existing pink and teal color scheme with a neutral palette of cream, taupe, and sage, complemented by natural wood and metal accents to establish a more cohesive coastal aesthetic. Existing metal guardrails adjacent to guest rooms would be replaced with a metal framed guardrail system incorporating cable infill to meet current building and safety requirements. Several balconies already feature glass guardrails, which will remain in place and be protected during construction in accordance with the submitted plans. To the right of the slide, you'll see both an example of glass guardrails in place today. This is a sample, not the on-site photo. And then on the bottom right, that's where you're looking at with the cable installation within the metal frame. As noted on the prior slide, balcony guardrails will be repaired or replaced with the code-compliant cable systems where spacing has been identified as a safety concern. Cedar shingles will be installed on the low roof at the covered courtyard entrance and the pool structure along Coast Highway. And cedar siding will be added to the north elevation adjacent to the lower garage level to enhance modified facade. Existing privacy screens between room balconies will be repaired or replaced as needed, and new cedar shutters, maintaining 50% openness for required ventilation, will be installed at covered parking areas within those garage spaces and replaced along the pool enclosure. Together, these improvements modernize the building's appearance while ensuring compatibility with surrounding development along South Coast Highway. The project also includes a roof-mounted mechanical screen not to exceed 25 feet above the finished grade to conceal previously permitted kitchen exhaust equipment associated with the already approved lobby and bistro relocation. The image on the right shows the equipment screening as viewed from South Coast Highway frontage. However, the mechanical screen would be installed toward the rear of that building along the south elevation, where it will have minimal visibility from the public right-of-way. Existing planters and landscaping will remain, and no changes are proposed to exterior site lighting. A bluff top assessment was prepared. Was prepared for the project to identify the bluff edge and confirm the applicable bluff top setback. The existing balcony railings along the rear of the property are located within the required setback. Although railings, so this is only select railings, are proposed to be replaced within the same location with no expansion of the existing footprint. The work occurs within the regulated bluff top area and therefore requires a coastal development permit. Based on the submitted technical information and the limited scope of work, consistent primarily of maintenance, repair, and the replacement of required safety barriers in the form of balcony guardrails, staff does not anticipate any difficulty in making the necessary coastal development permit findings for this project. Up on the slide, you're going to see not only the yellow is highlighting the areas where the barriers would be replaced, as opposed to the glass guardrails to be maintained as is, but the item on the right will show you where the bluff edge has been determined with the 50-foot setback. In this case, the rearmost portions of the building would be located within that 50-foot setback, which is what is requiring the CDP today. Okay, along the oceanfront edge of the property, the applicant proposes modifying the existing wrought iron fencing by lowering the existing barrier to 42 inches, adding a wood cap finish, and installing wood framing around existing gates for a more cohesive aesthetic, as shown in yellow on this slide. All improvements occur entirely on private property above the existing seawall with no new structures, no alterations to the seawall, and no work on the sand. These modifications create a more unified and visually compatible barrier while maintaining safety and protecting coastal resources. The signage proposal includes a new freestanding monument sign, replacing the prior roof-mounted sign along with 2 wall signs, all fully compliant with the C1 zone standards for size, height, and illumination. The freestanding sign A is a 25 square foot freestanding sign along South Coast Highway. It uses reclaimed wood and metal, includes downward directed lighting, and will be placed outside the required corner setback to maintain visibility at the corner of South Coast Highway and St. Anne. Wall B features a 5-foot circular logo wall sign that would be installed on the east elevation fronting South Coast Highway, composed of a Corten steel plate within a wall-mounted living wall and illuminated with subtle halo effect. So this is there would be a separation between the actual sign surface and the living wall to be able to provide some of that halo illumination, the backlit signage. And then wall sign C is a non-illuminated 6.4 square foot directional sign near the beach access point, providing wayfinding and it uses reclaimed wood to maintain a cohesive, understated aesthetic. All proposed signage complies with the applicable municipal code requirements. The project is consistent with all applicable policies and the city's general plan and local coastal program. The site is not located within a specific plan area. Its commercial tourist corridor land use designation supports hotel uses within the C1 district, and the proposal aligns with the land use elements policies by sustaining tourism-oriented uses without increasing development intensity. The applicant will be participating in the city's Art in Public Places program. The proposal includes installation of a new mosaic art piece on the eastern elevation facing South Coast Highway, supporting the city's goals for public art integration, and this would be a separate application. Staff review the applicant's information regarding daily room rates and determine that the hotel does not qualify as lower cost visitor accommodations under current standards. Because the project does not intensify the use, no in-lieu fee is required. The project is consistent with the local coastal program and does not result in adverse impacts to public views, coastal resources, or sensitive habitat. Staff finds that the proposal supports sustainable commercial reinvestment and advances land use element objectives related to tourism and commercial vitality. Overall, staff has analyzed the project and finds it to be consistent with the required CUP, DR, coastal development permit, and sign permit findings. Staff drafted project-specific conditions of approval to include but are not limited to all valet parking operations shall be conducted on-site using the 34 parking spaces identified in the plan with no off-site overflow or street parking permitted for valet use. The bistro shall operate solely as a guest serving amenity, limited to registered guests and their invitees, and all other conditions of approval in conjunction with CUP 0829 and CUP 11-28 shall remain in effect unless modified by this approval. So staff's recommendation would be to conduct a public hearing, consider all public testimony, and adopt the attached resolution approving the project and finding said action exempt from CEQA. So this concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions you might have.
Questions from the commission?
Just one quick one. The Bluff Edge designation, is that legal or legal non-conforming at this point?
So this would be, it'd be really more of a, I'm hesitant to say legal non-conforming because at the end of the day, this is actually a pre-coastal property.
Okay.
So they're allowed to maintain things exactly as is.
All right.
But it would require a coastal development permit if they were to do anything above and beyond.
Okay.
So it does get a little bit more nuanced when you're talking about improvements that are on the bluff, but predate the Coastal Act.
It is above and beyond associated with intensification of use?
Correct.
Thank you.
When you're a hotel guy, you should have some questions.
I talked to him on site.
Okay.
And he didn't answer any of them.
I had a question, and maybe I could get things a little confused, but it was a number of years ago, the residential unit that's oceanward of Building F as part of this. Do you know, was that previously under ownership of the previous hotel operator, or do you know? Because at one point there was a proposal where they wanted to rebuild their wooden stairs coming down from that property. And I thought that was at the same time that something else was happening with the Laguna Riviera Hotel, and that was part of a different overall project. I think it was before your time. I don't know if you remember.
It does predate me. I've heard similar things, but what I would do is defer to the applicant as they'll have more project-specific information. So as far as the property history.
I'll wait to ask them, I guess, after. The only other question I had was a number of the railings that are existing that are kind of, the angled leaning out railings that are wood and non-code compliant right now are proposed to be replaced with the new railing, which is a cable type railing system. Then there's other existing glass railings that are going to remain as is. We had other recent coastal projects where glass railings became an issue with some residents and then ultimately with the California Coastal Commission. Is there a difference between, and those projects, they were, I believe, either reconstructing or replacing a different type of railing system with new glass rails. Does that make a difference whether or not they're existing already and they're not being modified, or if they were new and proposed?
So as far as this particular item, my best, I'd say without guessing here, the information that I have is that this was related to the installation of new, and it also came as a result of public feedback that was provided. So without that type of public feedback and an understanding of whether or not that condition might apply in this scenario, we don't necessarily have a good way of determining whether bird-safe glass might be appropriate here. With it having been in existence for an extensive period of time, if we don't have any, record of bird strikes or something to that effect, you wouldn't necessarily see a need for modifying that existing structure further than what we already have today.
Okay.
But what about new railings?
Well, new, yeah, because I think what you're saying is new glass. If you put in new glass, then we probably would be required to study that?
Not necessarily. So that came out as a result of some of the conversations related to public input that was provided, and it's unique to the type of topography and how that particular area of the coastline operates. So if we don't necessarily have the winds coming across the island in a particular way or across the coastline in a particular way, you may not have the circumstances that warrant having additional bird safe protections in place. So it is something to be aware of, but I'm not familiar with whether or not there's anything specific on this site that would warrant additional study.
Well, and as a practical matter, and the applicant confirmed this, they're not replacing any of the rails with glass.
Correct. There's no new glass installation.
Thank you.
Is there a applicant presentation?
There is no applicant presentation, though they're here to speak with you as you have any questions.
Can you open it to my previous question about the ownership of that residential structure? That's more just out of curiosity than anything else. What was that owned by the previous owners of the hotel, or do you know? Right.
That was actually part of the package when we acquired the hotel through, oh, thank you. Is that on? There we go. For all the people here. I thought we were the main event. Everybody left. Actually, AC told me we were here to get a painting approval for the exterior. No, the home at 125 St. Anne's we acquired that separately at the time that we acquired the hotel. So it's not part of today's discussion, but we own that home as well. The stairs were fully remediated and rebuilt prior to our ownership.
Okay, but currently then you're not going to make that residence part of your operations and will not be part of the hotel operations?
Correct. That's zoned R3, I believe. And so it's a minimum 30-day rental property. So it can't be part of the hotel operation.
Oh, okay.
But the residence doesn't have stairs to the beach. The residence has a bridge to the public stairs to the beach, not its own dedicated stairs.
They have at the lower level down there, they do have some stairs that go straight down.
Oh,
to the
okay.
beach.
I've never noticed that.
There's 3 levels, and at the lower level, there's a fairly large terrace, and then there's a set of stairs to the beach.
Okay.
It was a relatively big deal at the time for them to try to get that approved to redo those stairs.
Yeah, and actually, AC was involved with this project prior to our involvement, and she can provide details. No, I think you went through the right process.
Yes, I had worked with the previous owner on that house. It actually was a historic structure. We went through a lengthy process with, actually, the planner was Anthony. And we went through to make sure we preserved the original house. In terms of the stairs, that was put in when there was a storm back in 2011. And that was completely washed out, and they had the permission to rebuild it.
Right, with the struggle.
With the struggle. Well, that's the norm.
Were you on any committee at that time?
I have a question. When we were out at the site today, we talked about the angled railings. Had a pretty long discussion about how they are a part of the aesthetic of the hotel. I think the angle really contributes to the character of the place, and the general vibe seems to support that general vibe. What are your thoughts about it at this point in time?
Start
So we went back to take a look at our records. We did a complete survey of the property, and in just the angled guardrail, they are in really poor condition. First off, they are not code compliant. And the horizontal rungs are actually made out of closet poles out of wood. And the support posts, none of them are minimum. We would like to use 4x4. Right now, they're actually 2x, and they're scabbed together. They're not a single piece either. So they're actually nailed composites. So that tells us that we can't salvage that because it will not comply to code even if we try to salvage the support. And besides that, the rungs intermittently, they're all either 4 or 5 rungs. So in other words, they're not 4-inch space apart by code. So we would have to revamp that completely. And then in terms of the angle support posts, we figured out that they're between 69 degrees up to 78 degrees. So in other words, they're moving like this. We will try our best to salvage some of it. We'll figure out a way or modify it. So we would like to request to allow to work with staff to figure out what is the best way so that economically is viable for the owner as well as for code safety. To me, that's my number one concern.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how my fellow commissioners feel about this, but I really like the angle. I think it gives it much
I brought
more.
it up
care-
as well, because I felt like, because my folks used to stay there when they were down, and it contributed to the 50s vibe of that
Definitely.
event. So,
Yeah, and that's kind
you
of
know.
what you're doing.
I kind of like the 40s vibe.
Okay, 40, sorry.
Yeah, okay, we can discuss that.
I can understand, the aesthetic of it, but from an engineering standpoint, that's a bad idea.
Well, if it could be code compliant and if the applicant felt it was cost effective, not cost prohibitive, then possibly. I mean, I just think that the other railings are just vanilla. I
Yeah.
mean, they're just pure vanilla, and they just don't contribute to the. But if it's not possible because it cannot be compliant, then it's off the table. But if it can be engineered, then and you're willing
anything's
to pay
possible.
for it.
Yeah, spend enough money.
And you're willing to pay.
Stainless steel would work.
Yeah. Well, if I can briefly respond to that, totally agree with your sentiment. Our general view as we've embarked on this project is to figure out ways to add to the character of the buildings. And to be honest, it's sort of a hodgepodge of various different uninspired architecture. There's a few flourishes here and there that kind of work, but there's a lot of stuff there that could be improved upon. And then when you find neat things like this railing system, that I agree, I think the aesthetics are good. We are going to endeavor to save those. However, totally agree. There's trade-offs, and when safety, and code compliance and just practical usage is going to override the aesthetics in this case. But we're going to try to do whatever we possibly can to make this a more charming facility, not more vanilla.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate what you're doing with the change out to the new vertical railings, provide some consistency. So, I mean, you don't want to create another hodgepodge of some, change some and leave some. So, I mean, it's just, it'd be great to see if it were possible. Now, I had a question, and I think it was in this, I'm sure it was in the staff report, but this has to do with the room rates. And there's a quote that says, guests determine the price they pay based on the quality of their experience. Did I read that correctly?
You read it correctly.
Yeah, so do you have any fun examles of people refusing to pay?
Yeah. And I think
Or overpaying because it was such a exceeded their.
Okay, you say that there's going to be a great punchline to your question here in a minute. First of all, we didn't prepare a presentation because I thought the staff did such a wonderful job with pulling things together, and I appreciate the commissioners for coming and spending time with us at the property. So we didn't do a presentation, but therefore we have a little bit of extra time to talk about who we are and what we're endeavoring to do here. So back in 2018, Pam, my co-founder and wife, and I formed a company called Soul Community Planet, SCP. The focus on Soul Community Planet is to make the world around us a better place by serving those who value wellness, social good, kindness, community, and the planet. And as a result of working in industry in the career, learning, trying to disabuse myself from the stuff that I learned from Steve, working with him, it's been hard. We found a different way to do things. And so we try to innovate in almost everything that we do as long as we're advancing the core values of healthy, kind, and green. Another way to say Soul Community Planet. One of the ways that we do that, and I think this really does serve Laguna Beach, and I was hearing the earlier conversation, I was just nodding my head saying, man, I think what we're doing is maybe going to help address some of the concerns of many of the folks who stepped up and went to the mic tonight. Because we cater to people who don't care about their Marriott points. They don't care about their Hilton Honors rewards or anything like that. What they care is when they come to our hotels, they're helping to make the world around us a little bit better. And that's part of their value system. They choose to stay with us because when you stay with us, we plant more trees than in unnaturally deforested areas. In the case of Laguna Beach, we plant kelp offshore using a partnership with Sea Trees and the Boardwriters Foundation. If you think about the natural environment that was discussed in the prior conversation, the ecosystem that exists right off of shore of this hotel is incredibly vibrant. And it's incredibly vibrant thanks to the efforts of many different NGOs and groups who care about the natural setting. So we formed our company with a very innovative structure and style. And we threw away the traditional notion of this transactional system of commerce, where I tell you what you're going to pay me, you give me the money, and we hope you leave without asking, or making too many complaints and making too much trouble. We do it a different way. We attract people who share our values, and they walk through the door because of what we stand for. And then we further underscore that relationship that we have with our guests by allowing them to choose the price they pay based on the quality of their experience. When we first announced that, it's called Fair Trade Pricing. When we first announced that program, we didn't mean to, but we got a ton of press. A lot of people said, you guys are crazy. You're crazy for forming a new brand in the United States anyway, but now to have a new hotel brand that also allows the guests to choose the price they pay is really idiotic. And it's proven to be anything but. What I just described is exactly how it works. We attract the right kinds of people. They appreciate what we stand for. And we measure very closely incidents of fair trade pricing. What it is, it's a relief valve. If something goes wrong, if there's a bug in the room, if the light bulb doesn't work, something doesn't happen. And from the Four Seasons on down, there are always going to be problems that occur in hotels. We now have a relief valve that says, you don't have to negotiate with us. You don't have to complain. You don't have to do anything. This is our problem, not your problem. You tell us the price you're going to pay, and we'll honor it. It measures to about 0.5% of total revenues every year is associated with some sort of a fair trade pricing adjustment. We have 10 hotels across 9 in the US, 1 in Costa Rica. I encourage you all to go visit the one in Costa Rica. It really represents the brand well. In December, we had a guest that stayed there and was, according to everybody on the team, we weren't there at the time, a giant pain. One of those customers that you just don't want to have to deal with day in and day out. And we expected that would be a full price adjustment at the time that he left. When he left, he said, this was the best place I've ever stayed. The service was great. What you stand for really matters. You're making the environment around us a better place. You're making the community a better place. I'm going to pay an extra $100,000 for my stay. $100,000. And then he came back after he paid that. He paid $100,000 extra, and then he came back afterwards, and now he's given an extra $1 million to the property to build an extra facility and so on that he's donating to the property. So I now have a response to the question: how often do people pay extra? Very rarely, but when they do it in a big way.
Well, you just ruled me out of staying in Costa Rica.
No, there's the way I heard it, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of money for complaints. That's the complaint pool now.
Oh, I had one other question for the applicant. When you were talking about the valet and the parking lot there and the drop-off, is there a dedicated rideshare drop-off pickup point within the parking lot?
Oh, not with, no, right in front of the hotel though, right on PCH.
Okay, and that's city parking, or is it like a yellow spot, or what? Is that already designated that way, or?
Oh, I thought you were referring to a bus, like a.
No, I'm talking about rideshare. So Uber, Lyft, and Uber. How are you dealing with that kind of stuff? If people are showing up, would they just?
Yeah, they can pull right into the carport there.
Okay, so no dedicated spot. Special. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Well, following up on the parking, where do your employees park? Is that factored in?
Yeah, it's factored in. Many of our employees do rideshare to come to the hotel. We have 34 dedicated spaces. We have a total of 41 rooms. We've been sold out a lot, and we've never had an issue with parking. Jimmy, our general manager, is here with us tonight. And I can let Jimmy, if you can help to answer that question. Because I honestly don't have a good answer for you as to exactly where all the team members park, but I do know that many of them use public transportation to get to the hotel.
Yeah, I would say that most of our employees, they do ride sharing or they do public transportation to get to the hotel. And we have about like 15 employees that we actually have. We see around 30, probably about 30% of the people that that are coming in from the airport on Ubers and those type of.
Excuse me just for a second. It's really best if you speak into a microphone.
Sure.
Sorry about that.
No problem. So about 30% is the customers that come in that are using Ubers and when they're coming into the airports and so on. We also offer some great incentives for our groups. So if they decide to use Uber when they're coming in and all that, we do offer them some benefits of that, of savings if they use those type of transportation rather than bringing their cars. Our employees, the patterns of our employees, when they're working, they're coming during the day when our guests are usually checking out. And so it's really easy to turn over those during the day. And again, at any given time, we really don't have any more than about 7 to 8 employees at any one time that are working. So it works very, very well. We run, we're running 100% occupancy. It's just not a problem.
What percentage of guests, Jimmy, would you say are driving in versus alternative means of transportation?
Driving in.
Driving and parking a car.
Yeah, I'd say probably close to 50% right now. About 50% are driving in. But we do a lot of customers that are ride sharing that are coming in for our group business. And they're coming in on shuttles, different. We get a lot of travel from the airport, a lot. But we also have a lot of return customers. So our return customers that are coming in, and we get a lot of families that come in that are buying 2 or 3 rooms, and then they're ride sharing as well. But the times are changing, as you know, it's dramatically.
We talked about that a couple of meetings ago.
Yeah, it's a great thing. It's really, really great.
Odd question. There used to be a shuttle service at airports. They were blue vans with yellow writing. Do they still exist? Haven't seen them.
I don't think so. I think between Turo and all the rental cars, primarily that's going on today, that you see all that happening today. And the airport transportation, everything's gotten so expensive that a lot of people are using Ubers just to get from where their location. And then of course it's all, there's so many different things changing in that world today. So it's really great. And Laguna being itself, a lot of people come to our property in particular because they love what we're about. And so they want to give back and they're very conscious about that when they're traveling in our hotel. So it's definitely improved in our hotel.
How much is your golf cart shuttle used?
Is it used?
Frequently people.
Frequently,
Yeah.
yeah. And we use that for shuttling to and from downtown as well. We have a lot of our guests, when they are staying here, we shut them to there because that's another benefit of experience at a hotel. It is obviously legal to do that. And we do that between both properties. So it makes it really easy. And that also helps us a lot.
Yeah, we haven't seen that from any other applicant.
I'll tell you,
You're the first one.
Is that right?
Shown that. Yeah.
It's a great thing for us. And when we added that benefit, we did it for a couple reasons, obviously. But when you get weddings coming in, it helps us a lot, right? And we do a lot of that type of business there. And so shuttling them too, it's really helped a lot. And the service, the type of service, we're not very transactional, as Ken has pointed out. We're not transactional. We're not service. We're transformational experiences. And so we're really making a big difference in all different parts of that.
We had a recent hotel project that came in, and as part of meeting their parking requirement, they were providing a lot of bicycle spaces. And I was asking them, how many people bike to your hotel?
Not too many in Laguna. Yeah.
Like compliance to Cal Green
Thank you.
requirement.
Yeah.
Any other questions to the applicant?
I have some.
Well, go for it.
Let's see. I wanted to ask you, we talked a little bit about your monument sign, and I was just curious because overall the building is very warm, subtle colors, and it just feels inviting to me. And the monument sign is kind of a much colder feel to it. I'm just curious as to why you went that direction versus trying to warm it up a little bit. And
Yeah, that's a good question, Joe. It may be the rendering that we use doesn't depict what's the intent there. We really do want to have a very compatible palette with the various elements. And frankly, my view on signage and branding in general is that we want to minimize that. People can find our properties very well today using the technology that's available to them. So we really don't need a flashing neon sign on the roof. We already took off the big Riviera sign from the main entryway there, which may be somewhat controversial. I don't know. It seems like it was okay to do. So we've got a relatively small sign, but let us check the color scheme. We certainly wouldn't want to do something that's contrasting with the broader palette that we're going for.
It was meant to be more of a undertone of a driftwood. And driftwood, depending on how long it's been rolling in the ocean, can change color. And depending on the species of the tree. And our explanation is that one rendering that was shown is actually more of a grayish color. So it's a blend of gray and beige. And we feel confident that once we have it up, you'll like it.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just was curious because it seemed like it was very contrasting to the warmth of the building to me.
Kind of edge.
Yeah, the rest of the wood will be allowed to naturally patina. One of the philosophies from the owners is that they don't want to continue to repaint and paint and paint, because ultimately that would end up in the environment. And if we can allow the material, the patina, just like a cordon steel, just like the driftwood, the element will create the barrier in time.
Right.
So it just takes patience.
I wanted to, and I want to preface this by saying I'm not trying to redesign anything for you, but I wanted to create a suggestion. And it's about the wall sign facing Coast Highway, the circular Core 10 sign. The lettering would be painted on the Core 10, right?
No, it's channel cut in the Core 10. So it's actually a lens behind the Core 10, and then there's a light behind the lens. So as was noted by Samantha, there's a relief. So the Core 10 sign sits about 3 or 4 inches away from the face of the wall. It's in front of a living wall. There's a light behind it and a lens. You laser cut the letters into the Core 10. And then there's a lens behind that, and the light lights up the letters very subtly. And then it creates a halo effect around the.
Okay, because it was my understanding when I was there that it was just painted on the Core 10. And what I was going to say is
That's not
with the halo light around it, it's just going to look like a black dot versus. So I was going to suggest.
Example of one on 741 on top of the green.
I was just going to suggest, water the logo out and then backlight it so that with, okay. As far as the art and public places piece, looks like you've already contacted Jesse Bartels to potentially do that for you. And I'm going to assume that part of the project is going to go through the Arts Commission.
Yeah, and to be clear, we've had preliminary conversations with Jesse Bartel. We're intending to reach out to a broad range of local artists.
Okay.
Yeah, and then follow the proper protocol with the artist or the
Arts Commission. Yeah. Okay. The roofing replacement is just the Coast Highway side near the pool fencing, and then some of the other sloped roofing along Coast Highway. Is that the only roofing replacement?
There's a hip roof right above the pool that actually is purely aesthetic. It doesn't actually do anything, and it's got these failing asphalt tiles on it now. So we'd like to.
Those are going to be replaced with what?
Cedar. And we've studied it where we can do that and still be in compliance with the fire codes and so.
They have Class A
Right.
fire rating.
Right. And are you providing any bike or motorcycle parking on the property or ADA parking?
Yes. Part of this exercise is please allow us to install 2 brand new ADA accessible parking stalls. One is actually covered. The other one is actually open to the sky. One is for van accessibility, and while the other one's just for car. Bicycle parking, we are in compliance with Cal Green. We're required to put in bicycle parking spaces, and we are providing it.
Okay. And my only other comment is about all the wood that you show in the staff report looks very kind of new and clean and warm color, and I know your intent is to allow, the cedar or whatever siding to go natural, which will eventually turn gray and, and maybe have some staining on it from the nails and things like that. So that's actually what's going to happen versus what's in the staff report, is that?
It's actually both. As you walk through the site, there are partitions between the guest rooms and the balcony. Those will stay relatively clean in its natural state. And then the one in the outside on the facade, especially facing Coast Highway, we're allowing that to patina because it's more natural to the environment being on Coast Highway.
And so that's inclusive of all the shutters along the pool, because they're in this, again, in the staff report, they look very clean and new, and they're not that when you're on site. So how they are.
For 2 years to be in front of you, so I'm sorry.
Oh,
one thing though, much of the wood there is sort of at its worst stage, in my opinion, of patinaing. It's like at this mid stage that is not that aesthetically pleasing. We do need to take a look at the shutters that are on the PCH. What we found is that it's mostly rubber that sort of emanates from the wheels or the tires on the road, and it ends up getting sort of a soot covering on those things. So we're going to work on a protocol for cleaning those without. Again, we'd prefer not to use a ton of sealants and a ton of chemicals on those things, but at the same time, they're not looking the way they're supposed to at the moment.
It isn't, because I have noticed that they haven't weathered well. And I particularly noticed when we were inside the pool, it looked much better.
Yeah.
So the reason is it's because of the cars.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
It's a fix for it. It's a matter of scrubbing it down, cleaning it, and then using vinegar. And then using a wire brushing, you can actually give it more of a patina, look more even, so it turns into a little bit grayer tone. And we will have to do that clean out, but with natural material.
Vinegar, water, and steel wool. Let it cook for a while, and then that's a very great pickling for all of the wood.
That's it. Basically, we're pickling the wood.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that.
Any other questions for the applicant? I'll close the public hearing and open, yes?
I just want to be sure no one else is
Oh,
here.
yes.
And there's people here, so I'll make sure that everyone's on your applicant team and no one else wants to public comment. Thank you very much, Chair.
Shocking.
Thought I figured that out, but.
Once again, I just want to make sure for the record, because the
Well, Anthony
camera-
may have wanted to come up and say
you
something.
can speak and the camera cannot see the.
Okay. I'll open it up to commission discussion. Ken, you want to go first?
Yeah. No, I think it's a great project. Staff report was great. I think it covered everything. I agree with some of the staff determinations regarding the limitation of the bistro to being just to the hotel guests and the guests of the guests. And they went as far as in the resolution to say that that the bistro will charge any charges directly to the rooms, and there won't be any point of sale there. That helps prevent any sliding that way and having people other than that being served there. And that, that's primarily because that would have triggered, intensification of use and additional parking requirements, which would have been hard to fulfill. I'm fine with the sign permit as it's being proposed. I appreciate, the alternative transportation that you're proposing to do and the shuttle. And I think that probably will be well used, and that's a nice touch. People can come fly into the airport and take, ride share an Uber or whatever and get to the hotel and then have some sort of transportation around town. Although, the city does a pretty decent job now with our trolleys and shuttles and everything as well. So that's all great. Don't have a particular issue regarding the rails, whether or not you try to maintain that angled look or not. I am an engineer, so from an engineering standpoint, it makes me a little nervous. It's just not a great idea to have angled guardrails like that, where you're leaning out and potentially pushing on. You're putting a little bit more extra force on it. So if I was engineering those, I would put in a little extra factor of safety. Regarding the glass rails, I brought that up because that had happened on a recent project, but we have and no birds here tonight to complain. So, we can let that one go. And I agree with the staff's determination regarding the findings to approve the CUP and the coastal development permit, and agree also with the CEQA exemption. So I am willing to support the project.
Yeah, I'm also willing to, as much as I would like to not. Ken. Just kidding. I'm also supportive of the project and can make the findings, primarily on the basis that it's not an intensification of use. And I think more because, just because I've known you and have walked around the property a bunch over the years, it's an older property. It's, as you said, it's kind of all over the place architecturally, different inconsistencies, and which makes it very capital intensive. And I think what you guys have done to date has been mindful of capital, but also tasteful, and doing it with landscaping and planters, and putting the money where it shows. So I support the project on the basis that you're not looking for anything that you're not entitled for. And I think what you're doing it in a responsible and tasteful manner. So that killed me to say.
Yeah, I agree with both commissioners' comments. There's not a whole lot to add, but what I do appreciate is the thoroughness of your, for lack of a better word, brand. That it's woven through everything that you're trying to do. It's the transportation, it's the material, the building materials, it's keeping the basic look of the original hotel, which, you heard all the comments here tonight. That's very important, and the scale of it on Coast Highway is important. The single story, it's quirky, and I think of Laguna a lot like Tokyo in that way, is that the architecture is just all over the place, and there's a lot of really bad architecture here. I mean, we have no really great architecture, let's put it that way, but it's the texture of the place that is, and the age of the place, age of some of the buildings that gives us this town and the quality that people come here for. So, and you try to weave this idea through everything you do, which I think is really, it's a great concept, given that it's such a money pit too. I mean, I appreciate that even more, because you could cut corners on this, and you're trying, it's earnest. I believe you.
Yeah.
So I'm supporting the project.
I hope none of our local architects heard your comment.
Wow.
Look at yours, AC.
Well,
It's the buildings that didn't have architects.
Oh, yeah.
And be thankful, George, there's no crazy bricks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy Brick.
Um,
You know about Crazy Brick, right?
No,
Yeah.
then I know that.
Don't get started.
You need to know.
Well, I don't have a lot more to add other than, I met you guys, 4 years ago, I think, down at the Zinc, and you were describing this project to me at the time, and I'm just glad to see it's finally coming to fruition for you and your company. I agree with what's been said. I think it's the refresh of the, I don't know, is it considered a hotel or a motel? I kind of look at it as a motor court, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm just glad to see that it's going to get cleaned up, and all the parts that are falling apart are going to be refreshed and cleaned up. And it's been kind of an eyesore for a long time, I think. And I thought the sloped railings were kind of a great feature but I agree with Commissioner Sadler that to lean out onto those just seems a little treacherous. Although I love the aesthetics of it, I think it's probably not going to be feasible to try to maintain that look, and to do something that's functional and compliant is, for the safety of your guests, is the most important thing for us, I think. And so anyways, I'm just glad to see it finally getting done, and it's a real asset to the community. And I think your approach to your concept is really an interesting one that I've not heard before. So I think that's very cool too. And I can make the findings as well, and the class 1 CEQA exemption for maintenance. So I'll be approving it as well.
Yeah, I think I agree with most of everything that's been said. My only adds are, nobody's really complimented you yet on adding the garage doors, on the side street. That's a huge move, and that's really gonna, it's money, and it's gonna complicate operations, but it's really gonna make the street completely different in terms of its aesthetics. So I think that's a great move. And I just, I just get the feel on some of these projects when you walk around and some of the remodeling's already been done, you really get the feel that it's really a quality act, and that it's a caring, and, the details, are apparent, that, and so it just makes me feel good about folks like you coming into our town, buying property and investing a significant capital. It's a really good thing for our town. So appreciate you doing that. So I will.
Here, can I add just one additional comment? I was just going to say, I always enjoy reading through the historical assessments, and well, the ultimate determination was that this property is not considered eligible for any historic nature or anything. But one thing I found interesting in it was that building F, which we were just talking about, has the tuck under parking stuff, was designed by Chris Abel, who's a well-respected former architect, since deceased, here in town, where we've had other projects that we were, quite stunning and stuff. But this building is not one of not one of those examples.
Well, we had a discussion about that building, because there actually was some architectural interest there that had been added, and they're stripping it all out and sort of keep making it consistent with the rest of the building, which I can understand that. But I didn't know it was Chris Abel. I might have said more, but anyway. So anyway, would somebody like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll do it. Planning Commission moves approval of conditional use permit 2024-2667, design review 2024-2666, coastal development permit 25-0296, and sign permit 2024-2668. And findings meet the requirements of CEQA.
I'll second.
Wasn't there a modification to the original CUP in terms of the food or alcohol service or something that needed to be in there, or is that part of it?
That's in the conditions.
Is it, I think we should note for the record that it's an amendment to CUP 11-28 to establish valet parking related to food and beverage service.
Okay.
Somebody second it?
Yeah, we have a second.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Sadler?
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten?
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin?
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Goldman?
Yes.
Chair Kellenberg?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Get to work.
Well, thank you all for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. And just particularly, I thought that report was incredibly well done. So thank you, staff. Samantha. You did
I
great.
agree. It was very, very complete. Good job. Okay, is there any other business? Are there any reports from staff to the commission?
So I've actually invited Anthony Vieira here to join us to give us a summary of some of the, I would say, discussions that were had last week with the city council.
Anthony who?
I know, you've never seen him before.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invite to your meeting this evening. Very much appreciate it. Good
You're
evening.
always invited, Anthony.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Kellenberg and members of the Planning Commission. As Samantha alluded to, on Friday of last week, the City Council held its annual strategic planning session, and I'll give just a brief summary of some of the more planning-related discussions that were had on that day. First, as the council always does, they recap the initiatives from the prior year. And one of those initiatives for the city was to improve the community development processes. We also received a grade assigned to how we performed. It was an A-, which I don't love A-, but I think in this context, it's actually a really great acknowledgement. It's quite a remarkable turnaround that we've seen in the department in terms of addressing the planning application backlog and other challenges. There is more work to be done, and that was not glossed over. That's okay. This department operates with a continuous improvement mindset. And that then takes me to the next topic, which is planning for the year ahead. So the city manager presented 4 initiatives, 4 core initiatives that will be of primary focus for the upcoming year. For planning, it was a focus on our advanced planning efforts. So essentially working with our zoning regulations, with our long-range planning documents, like the general plan, to ensure that these documents are doing what we want them to and as effectively as possible. So the director of the department, Matt Schneider, presented a list of our active advanced planning projects and what I would call the wish list, which is a list of special projects, advanced planning projects that have been mentioned at various points over the past year by one or more council members. And I'll just briefly run through what those 2 buckets consist of. The active advanced planning projects are first and foremost the comprehensive zoning code update. In response to council direction, we are fast tracking the updates to the non-residential parking standards and also the objective design standards, starting with 1- and 2-family residential projects. We also have the downtown specific plan phase 2 update, as we talked about earlier this evening. The efficiency ordinance, the Planning Commission might recall you held a joint session with the board earlier in 2025, and that will be returning to this body very soon for your recommendation to council for a possible adoption of that ordinance. We have an ADU ordinance that the city council has adopted that's currently with the Coastal Commission for review and certification. There's ongoing work to update the open space and conservation element. There's been policy discussions on use of the Irvine Bowl for concerts and such, primarily related to noise. And then also we have a historic register project, essentially evaluating our current historic register list, identifying those properties that maybe lack a historic preservation agreement, what to do with those bucket of properties, and then also with consultant input, advise the city on how we might refine our permitting process to ensure compliance with CEQA and other relevant standards. And then on the potential advanced planning projects list, we have a comprehensive update to the general plan, which I'll get back to that in a moment, an outdoor dining ordinance, updates to the city's regulations pertaining to view restoration and preservation, updates to the tree removal ordinance. There's been interest expressed by the Housing Committee in particular regarding the city's eviction noticing procedures, which is codified in our municipal code, revisiting our Mills Act tax incentive program for historic properties to consider if the city's current process reflects best practices. There's the CRC, former St. Catharines and South Laguna, possible zoning overlay at that property for alternate uses, and then a fee study and update. So part of this discussion focused on the comprehensive general plan update. This was an initial discussion just to gauge city council interest in such a project. As this body knows, our planning division doesn't have a dedicated advanced planning unit. So part of the conversation is, what are the city council's priorities? And in particular, if we are going to take on the comprehensive general plan update, are we okay with deferring some of these other very important initiatives in order to really tackle in earnest this general plan update? So why might we comprehensively update the general plan? One, because it's never really been done holistically. We have certain general plan elements that haven't been updated for several decades at this point. We have state laws that we need to catch up to be brought into compliance with current state laws with respect to different requirements. We want to ensure that there is a consistent architecture across these elements so that they're readable, usable, and we're avoiding any internal inconsistencies. We also are interested in possibly decoupling the coastal related policies for a variety of reasons, and this has been done in other coastal cities, and we just think that it would be a great benefit here in Laguna Beach. We talked about housing a little bit as part of the downtown discussion. We want to start getting ahead of the next housing element cycle, which is going to be here before we know it. We haven't yet been given our housing allocation for the next housing cycle, but we really do need to start the planning now in order to avoid a situation where we have a non-compliant housing element and are potentially subject to the builder's remedy. There are other related goals, but those are some of the key highlights. There will be a follow-up discussion with the City Council in the very near future to have a more extensive discussion about this and how the department prioritizes this workload. If we are given the green light to pursue a general plan update, and I would say following last week, we probably have a yellow light right now. There will be many public meetings involved with that process. I imagine there's going to be a council ad hoc committee, steering committees. This body will be very actively involved in those efforts as well. That's, I guess, my summary. Kept it very planning focused, but there were many other subjects of discussion, 4 initiatives for the upcoming year, which I won't discuss in detail here, are wildfire preparedness and prevention, fiscal sustainability, and stewardship.
So we had that big objective zoning code workshop a while back. How is that coming along?
That is continuing to progress. I believe the consultant is currently hard at work on preparing the first administrative draft of the objective design standards. And it's anticipated that we'll receive that complete draft, I believe, in late spring, early summer.
Does that come back to us again, or does that just go to the DRC, or what?
I believe that the next step will be to do some public outreach. I think in particular, we want to have conversations with our architect stakeholders group because we see a lot of value in receiving their input because they, like staff, will be directly implementing the ODS once they are adopted by City Council. There will be an additional follow-up discussion with City Council following those stakeholder discussions.
Did I hear you say that if the priority is the general plan update, that the advanced planning will be delayed?
Some will continue to move forward. We don't want to necessarily pause projects that are pretty far along and that we can continue to allocate resources to get them over the finish line. So we'll have very candid, transparent discussions with the City Council, make them aware what the opportunity costs based on whatever decision they'd like to make.
I think the Neighborhood Congregational Churches Affordable Housing Project, my understanding is that they've, kind of scaled back their proposal pretty significantly. Is that going to be coming before the Planning Commission anytime in the near future?
It is subject to Planning Commission review and approval. At this time, we do not have a complete application, and so I don't have a projective hearing date, but city staff is working closely with the applicant team to ensure that city staff is provided with the information it needs in order to move forward with the entitlements.
Thank you.
Do you have I know I asked you informally about this, but a time where Public Works will be bringing materials and landscaping plan for the fire station back to us?
I don't have a concrete date. I will say at this time, Public Works is very much hard at work on the promenade, kicking that construction project off. I think the Planning Commission may be aware that the council recently awarded a construction contract. And so that is going to kick off very soon here. I know that the Public Works Department has not lost sight of their commitment to return to this body for a public discussion on a few elements of the Fire Station 4 project, namely colors and materials and the final landscape plan. We do have periodic check-ins with their staff, and I know that that is something that they are going to be bringing back to the Planning Commission. They've just had to shift their priorities in light of the promenade.
Okay, thanks, sir.
When do you think Anthony construction starts? I heard like spring, March, April?
For the fire station?
No, for the promenade.
I believe they're breaking ground by end of this month, actually. It's happening very quickly. The timeline is quite aggressive and ambitious. I think it's realistic, but it's with very good reason. Public Works is very much dedicating their resource to that project. We do want to minimize impacts on the business community and others. So the plan is to move forward with the construction now during the quote unquote off season.
What did you know what the construction period is? I don't recall. It's not terribly long.
No, and I believe it should be completed by summer.
That'd be remarkable.
March, April, May.
Any reports or other questions from the commission?
I had a few things, but I'm going to defer that to another meeting.
Thank you. Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
Is the 18th is our next meeting? I think?
I'll make a motion to adjourn to the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission on February 18th.
Second.
Commissioner Sadler?
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten?
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin?
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Goldman?
Yes.
Chair Kallenberg?
Yes. Adjourned.